Chapter 4440. You've given up now. Lin, he casually threw the escort on the ground. Everyone's eyelids twitched. Then, he said calmly, "You can settle the bill now. Say it in a small way." Everyone was taken aback for a moment before they realized that he was referring to the points he was referring to. "What kind of trick did you use?" Wu Bao Liang didn't give up. His triangular eyes emitted a dangerous light. He was about to rush forward and grab Lin Yi's collar. "You can give it a try." Lin Yi suddenly laughed. He was just worried that he didn't have a chance to kill his opponent. If this guy took the initiative to attack him, he could justifiably kill this scum in front of everyone. At the same time, Qi Mingyuan, Qi Wenhan, and the others suddenly emitted killing intent, forcing Wu Bao Liang to stop midway. If he didn't stop, these people would really attack together and kill him. I'll find out soon enough when you die in my hands." Wu Bao Liang laughed cruelly. After looking deeply at Lin Yi, he said something to Cheng Haonan and Long Qiba, then turned and left. Looking at Wu Bao Liang's back, Lin Yi couldn't help but feel pity. This guy was arrogant, but he wasn't stupid. Of course, if he was really stupid, he wouldn't have lived until today. He would have fallen into the law enforcement hall's hands in the northern part of the island. "Chief Escort High, you have nothing to say now, right?" Lin Yi turned to Boundless Sea and said. Boundless Sea's face was ashen. He didn't even say a word. He coldly snorted and turned to leave. Looking at his posture, he was too lazy to search the next two escort agencies. He wasn't in the mood to do so. Lin Yi, Qi Mingyuan, and Qi Wenhan looked at each other and smiled. Then, he turned to the crowd and said, "Which other escort agency is willing to challenge me?" "Fuck." Everyone's faces darkened. "You've already earned a whole 300 points in this round. You've dragged the Four Seas Escort Agency and the Dragon Boat Escort Agency into the pit, and you're still not satisfied? You still want to take advantage of me?" Lin Yi's gaze swept over the remaining people in charge of the escort agencies. They couldn't help but shrink their necks. There was definitely a trick to this, but it was definitely not something that could be solved in a short period of time. Only a fool would fall for it. That's it. Forget it then. Lin Yi was a bit disappointed. Since no one came to challenge him, there was no need to return the escort. As for the bandits, even though their leader, Boundless Sea, was gone, the match still had to continue. Zhao Bufan and the others were still there. He immediately turned to the next escort agency. "Brotherling, can you tell me now? Where are you hiding?" Seeing that everyone had gone far away, and that his own father, Qi Mingyuan, had also followed them, Qi Wenhan hurriedly rushed over. Compared to the excitement of obtaining 300 points, he was actually more curious about this matter. "It's a secret." Lin Yi smiled and didn't say anything else. The answer was simple. He just casually put it into the space of the jade pendant. Of course, no one would be able to find it. However, this answer could not be told to anyone. It could only remain a secret forever. Qi Wenhan felt like 100 claws were scratching at his heart. However, Lin Yi refused to relent. There was nothing he could do. No amount of coaxing or pestering would work. In the end, he could only bitterly give up. However, he quickly threw this matter to the back of his mind. This was because the bandits had already found the other two escort agencies' escorts. At this point, the fourth round of the Hidden Darts competition was over. Everyone returned to Magic Coal Plaza. At this point, the publicly announced rankings were already over. After 4 rounds of competition, the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency had a super high score of 670 points. Their advantage was so great that everyone could only look up to them in awe. Next, in second place was the traditional powerhouse Divine Wind Escort Agency, with a total of 270 points. Although it was far from being able to compare to the outstanding Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, it still trampled on the other escort agencies. As for the Four Seas Escort Agency, who was originally in second place, because they had challenged the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency in the 4th round of competition, not only did they not manage to keep the 70 points they had earned, but they also lost 30 points. In the end, after 4 rounds of competition, they had a total of 240 points. They were tied for 3rd place with the other 5 major escort agencies. It was worth mentioning that the ambitious Dragon Boat Escort Agency had a total of 110 points in 4 rounds of competition. They were ranked 5th from bottom. If this trend continued, they would be ranked among the 5 weakest escort agencies in the South Continent, let alone competing for a spot in the top 5 escort agencies. On the publicly announced rankings, the 32 escort agencies' scores were clear at a glance. Some were happy, while others were sad. Now, the focus of everyone's discussion was naturally on the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, the super dark horse of this competition. Although it was one of the 5 major escort agencies in the previous competition, most people did not have high hopes for the Heavens Equal Escort Agency in the beginning. The bets were unanimously against the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, with at least 7 out of 10 people betting on it falling out of the top 5 escort agencies. Of course, these people were already crying their hearts out. After 4 rounds of competition, the Heavens Equal Escort Agency had scored 670 points, pulling a huge gap of 400 points from the second place. This was definitely unprecedented. Unless there was a catastrophic accident, the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, which originally belonged to the 4 Seas Escort Agency, had already fallen into the hands of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency in this competition. From this competition onward, the power structure of the escort agency industry in the South Continent would undergo earth-shattering changes. The focus would shift from the dark cold territorial waters to the previously unknown green arc territorial waters. From then on, the Heavens Equal Escort Agency would replace the 4 Seas Escort Agency as the #1 wealthy and influential agency in the South Continent. This was the consensus of almost everyone. Of course, other than a mainstream public opinion, there were naturally many other opinions. People who wholeheartedly criticized the Heavens Equal Escort Agency could still be seen. Regardless of whether these people were backed by other escort agencies, at least their arguments were not without reason. Looking at the previous South Continent Escort Agency Grand Meetings, although the first 4 rounds of competition were important as they could establish an advantage and widen the gap between the 2 sides, the real deciding event was still the last round. Although the Heavens Equal Escort Agency currently had a huge advantage, if they performed poorly in the final round of the competition, other escort agencies would take advantage of the situation and overtake them. Even the latecomers might overtake them. Only the escort agency that survived the 5th round of the competition and had the last laugh would be the true winner. Of course, the 5th round of competition would only begin the next day. At least for today, the Heavens Equal Escort Agency was undoubtedly the most popular agency among the chambers of commerce. Compared to the various discussions in the market, none of the 32 escort agencies, including the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, dared to let their guard down at this time. All of them were training their troops and making their final preparations for the final battle tomorrow. Chapter 44-41. No, we can't go on like this. We must take action immediately. We must kill Ling Yi. Long Kiba couldn't help but roar. There were still 3 people in the room. Chung Haonan and Wu Baoliang were sitting to one side and drinking tea. However, because Long Kiba hammered the table, the rare spirit tea had spilled all over the floor. They vowed to become one of the top 5 escort agencies and replace the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. For this, they even formed an alliance with the Poison Eye mercenaries. Their dreams were great, but unfortunately, reality was cruel. There was only 1 round left in the conference, and they achieved their ambition of becoming one of the top 5, but unfortunately, they were at the bottom. It's not difficult to kill Ling Yi. The difficult part is how to find an opportunity to do so. Wu Baoliang said with a gloomy expression. The scene that happened today had completely disgraced him. He had clearly used the all things mutually kill, such a foolproof move, but in the end, he was still fooled by Ling Yi. This was unbearable. More importantly, it was the first time the 2 of them had met face to face. However, for some unknown reason, he faintly felt that Ling Yi actually had a killing intent towards him. Because of his special cultivation method, his senses were much sharper than an ordinary expert in the Golden Core realm. There was no mistake about this. Was it because the other side hated the poison I mercenaries, so he hated them too? This was not impossible, but Wu Bao Yang's intuition told him that this matter was not that simple. In short, whether it was to kill this hidden danger or to remove the obstacle for the Dragon Boat Escort Agency, Ling, who suddenly appeared, had to die. But we have no right to set the rules of the competition, and it's difficult to think of a way to manipulate the situation. Whether we can defeat the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, especially against Ling, everything depends on luck. It's hard to say. Long Kiba scratched his head with a conflicted expression. Not necessarily. We can't do it ourselves. But someone can do it, Wu Baoyang said meaningfully. Who? Long Kiba was stunned. Brother Long, did you forget the Four Seas Escort Agency? Chung Haonan sneered from the side. From today's situation, it seems that besides us, Boundless Sea also hates this Ling to the bone. It's just that he doesn't dare to brazenly do so. You two mean to go to the Four Seas Escort Agency to find Boundless Sea? Long Kiba's eyes lit up. That's right. Their Four Seas Escort Agency has always been the hegemon of the South Continent's escort agencies. I heard that most of the competition rules were set by Boundless Sea. Isn't it a piece of cake for us to go up against the equal of Heaven Escort Agency? Chung Haonan laughed. Yeah. Long Kiba slapped his head and said happily, if we had gone to him for help before today, Boundless Sea might not have responded to us. But now, he will definitely help us with this small favor. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. This phrase has been tried and tested many times. Without further ado, Long Kiba and the other two discussed the matter. He immediately set off for the Four Seas Escort Agency, asking to see Boundless Sea. While the three handed over their name cards and waited to be notified, Boundless Sea was smashing cups in his study. Next to him was an exquisite tea set. One by one, they threw them on the ground, and the sound of banging rang out incessantly. This was Boundless Sea's habit. Whenever he was in a bad mood, he would smash the tea set. After venting out most of the evil fire, his mood naturally calmed down. The servants stood to the side, trembling with fear, waiting for Boundless Sea to finish smashing. They had to quickly clean up the broken pieces on the ground. Otherwise, if Boundless Sea got annoyed and got angry again, they might be the ones to suffer. When Boundless Sea finished smashing, his anger subsided. The guard, who had been waiting to the side, didn't miss the opportunity to hand over Long Kiba's and the others' name cards to Boundless Sea. Dragon Boat Escort Agency? What are these people doing here? Boundless Sea frowned slightly as he looked at the name card. Although the Dragon Boat Escort Agency wasn't the weakest in the South Continent, they had always been suppressed by the equal of Heaven Escort Agency. They had never had a chance to stand out, so naturally, they weren't worthy of his attention. Uncle C, do you want me to send them away? The guard at the door suggested after observing the situation. The Southern Continent Escort Agency Festival was being held here. These days, the heads of all the escort agencies would come to the Four Seas Escort Agency to pay their respects. The stronger large escort agencies were able to see Boundless Sea. As for the smaller escort agencies, they were all sent away with just a word. They didn't even get to see Boundless Sea's face. Wait. Boundless Sea hesitated for a moment, then made a decision. Take them to the small hall and wait. Yes, the guard replied and left. He couldn't help but feel surprised. This unknown Dragon Boat Escort Agency had some weight in Uncle C's heart. Even though they didn't have the right to enter the main hall, they could at least enter the small hall and not be sent away with just a word. What they didn't know was that Boundless Sea didn't care about the Dragon Boat Escort Agency at all. The reason why he agreed to meet them was purely because of what happened during the day. He felt that there might be something more to it. Long Kiba and the other two were led into the small hall. No one came over to serve tea, and no one came over to talk to them. They just waited like this for a quarter of an hour. When the three of them were filled with anger and couldn't hold it in any longer, Boundless Sea finally arrived. Dragon Boat Escort Agency's Long Kiba, Poison I mercenaries Chung Haonan, and Wu Bao Liang greet Chief Escort Sea. Although they were unhappy, they didn't dare to be negligent in front of Boundless Sea. They hurriedly stood up and greeted him. Please sit. I was talking to an important guest just now. Sorry for the delay. Please don't take it to heart. Boundless C chuckled. This was bullshit. In reality, he was just drinking tea in his study. He just wanted to ignore the three of them. Chief Escort C, you have many matters to attend to. Please forgive us for disturbing you. Long Kiba hurriedly smiled apologetically. You're being too polite. Why did the three of you come to my 4C's escort agency? Boundless C couldn't be bothered to waste words with the three of them. He went straight to the point. Long Kiba was stunned when he heard this. He looked at Chung Haonan and Wu Baoyang. They were clearly caught off guard. He originally wanted to exchange a few more pleasantries to get closer to them and increase their chances of success before talking about the matter. All right, let's not beat around the bush. Since Chief Escort C has come straight to the point, we won't beat around the bush. Long Kiba simply said, one doesn't come to a temple without a cause. We came here to ask Chief Escort C for a small favor. Chapter 44-42. That's right. I hope Chief Escort C can help us arrange an opponent for the upcoming match. Long Kiba blurted out. You wanting to throw the match? Boundless C's expression changed, and he said coldly, don't even think about it. The Southern Continent Escort Association's grand gathering has always been fair and impartial. No cheating is allowed. Otherwise, the grand gathering would lose its purpose. Please leave. Wait. Boundless C was about to send them off when Chung Haonan hurriedly said, Chief Escort C, please wait. We want you to arrange an opponent for us. It's none other than the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. Heaven's Equal Escort Agency? Boundless C's movements paused. These were the words he didn't want to hear the most. When he thought of how badly he had suffered, he couldn't help but be furious. That's right. The one we want to deal with the most is Heaven's Equal Escort Agency's Ling E. Chief Escort C, you've also suffered at his hands before. I'm sure you hate him to the bone. We can work together, Chung Haonan quickly said. He saw Ling E as a thorn in his side. In order to deal with Ling E and avenge his son, he was willing to pay any price. If he missed this opportunity, it would be too late for regrets. Oh, Boundless C slowly put the teacup back down. He didn't continue to chase them away. Instead, he fell into deep thought. As expected, there's a chance. Long Kiba and the others looked at each other. Their spirits rose and their hearts settled. Tell me, why do you want to deal with Ling E? Boundless C's fingers drummed rhythmically on the table as he looked up at the three. If it weren't for Chung Haonan's words, he would definitely have chased them away. After all, the 4C's escort agency's name was still there. If these people didn't keep their mouths shut and spoke carelessly, it would be easy for them to cause trouble. Even if it was just for his image, Boundless C had to maintain his impartiality. However, the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency and Ling E were two different matters. Chung Haonan was right. He hated Ling E to the bone. The 4C's escort agency had fallen from being the overlord of the escort agencies that was at its zenith to its current state of being overshadowed. It was ranked third on the scoreboard, almost falling out of the top 5. This was the main culprit behind all of this. It was Ling E. It would not be an exaggeration to say that out of the 670 points that the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency had obtained, at least 500 points had come directly from Ling E. This person's ability was so abnormal that it could not be viewed with common sense. After suffering at his hands twice in a row, even Boundless C had to admit that as long as Ling 1 was there, the chances of his 4C's escort agency turning the tables were minuscule. But now, a hired thug had delivered himself to his doorstep. He didn't mind adding fuel to the fire and killing with a borrowed knife. During the day, Boundless C had seen the conflict between Long Kiba and Ling E. Therefore, they believed that they had the foundation to become allies. However, before that, they had to first figure out the specific situation. Otherwise, it wouldn't be like using a borrowed knife to kill someone. Instead, he had become a knife in the other party's hand. Chief Escort High, you might not know this, But our Dragon Boat Escort Agency and the Poison Eye Mercenary Group are located in the same city as their Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. We've always been incompatible like fire and water. It's not the first time we've fought and killed each other. Long Kiba hurriedly explained. Huh, there can't be two tigers on one mountain. Boundless Sea raised his eyelids. This wasn't strange at all. People of the same trade were enemies. With two escort agencies squeezed together, it would be strange if they could get along. As for the Poison Eye Mercenary Group, there was an unwritten rule in the South Continent seas. All the so-called mercenary groups were actually the original pirate groups that had been whitewashed. Therefore, there was usually a blood feud between them and the local escort agencies. It was normal for them to be like fire and water. Not only that, my only son, Chin Tian, died in the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. He was killed by this Ling One. Chief Escort High, tell me, how could I let this bastard go? Chung Haonan added, gnashing his teeth. Oh, there's such a thing? Boundless Sea was moved. The hatred of his son's death was absolutely irreconcilable. Looking at Chung Haonan's expression, he wouldn't joke about this. Chief Escort High, in front of me, I don't dare to lie. Therefore, in order to avenge my son's death, I beg Chief Escort High to open the door of convenience and let me kill my enemy. This Chung will be eternally grateful. Chung Haonan was a smart person. He no longer talked about the hatred between the Four Seas Escort Agency and Ling One. Instead, he shifted the blame to himself. Your request is reasonable. Boundless Sea's expression was unfathomable. Long Kiba and the others thought he was going to agree and were overjoyed. They didn't expect him to suddenly change the topic. However, although our Four Seas Escort Agency suffered some losses in the Grand Meeting, this doesn't mean that we have to take revenge privately. It's taboo to destroy the public for personal reasons. The fairness of the Southern Continent Escort Agency's Grand Meeting will not be destroyed in my hands. Not in the past, not now, and not in the future. This dignified official reply left Long Kiba and the others dumbstruck. They couldn't help but look at each other. Wasn't this change a little too quick? Seeing that Boundless Sea was still speaking righteously and didn't seem like he was faking it, the three felt as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over their heads. They were immediately disappointed. Their little row already had the resolve to be the knife. They took the initiative to let the other side borrow the knife to kill them, but the other side didn't accept the knife. How are they supposed to play? Looking at the Southern Continent Escort Agency's Grand Meeting, only the 5 judges from the 5 great escort agency had the opportunity to play tricks in the open. The others were far from qualified. Unfortunately, Chung Haonan and Wu Bao Liang, these 2 amateurs, didn't need to be said. Even Long Kiba himself, because the Dragon Boat Escort Agency had always been weak, couldn't climb up to the higher branches of the 5 great escort agency. Now that he finally had the chance to use Ling One, a common enemy, to ask for Boundless Sea's help, he didn't expect to hit a wall. Things had already reached this point. Staying any longer would only make a fool of themselves. Long Kiba and the others looked at each other and could only salute Boundless Sea with flagging interest. If that's the case, then we won't disturb Chief Escort Sea any longer. We'll take our leave now. Wait. Boundless Sea suddenly stopped them. For the sake of justice, I definitely won't use my position to avenge a private grudge. However, seeing that you have a blood feud with me, this matter is pardonable. I can agree to help you secretly, but I can't be too biased. Do you understand? Chapter 44-43. As long as we can think of a way for our Dragon Boat Escort Agency to fight against their Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, it would be best if we can challenge Ling Yi. That way, we can guarantee that he will die a horrible death. Chung Haonan said impatiently. Is that true? Boundless Sea was stunned. Although he had never seen Ling Yi in action, he had been in close contact with him. Moreover, as the chief escort of the #1 escort agency in South Continent, his judgment of people was far sharper than that of ordinary people. Even if he did not know how strong Ling Yi was, he could at least see that this person was not easy to deal with. If he, the chief escort, personally fought, it would not be a problem. However, the problem was that the strength of the South Continent's escort agency had to be limited to the Golden Core stage. Experts above the nascent soul stage were not allowed to participate. This was the biggest problem. That's right. Our military advisor is an eccentric person who specializes in practicing a unique skill. Although his strength is suppressed to the Golden Core great perfection, his true strength is not even a middle stage nascent soul stage's opponent. He is our trump card. There is no need to use him in the previous few matches, but the finals are coming up, so there is no need to hide anymore. As long as we arrange for Ling Yi to fight against our military advisor, that kid will definitely die. Chung Haonan pushed out the silent Wu Baoyang. Oh, Your Excellency is so amazing. Boundless Sea suddenly became interested and looked at Wu Baoyang for the first time. In the South Continent Sea, the strength of a middle stage nascent soul stage was already considered powerful. They could basically do whatever they wanted. However, an expert in the Golden Core Great Perfection had the strength of a middle stage nascent soul stage. This was more than just rare. There was probably no such eccentric person in the entire Heaven Stage Island. With such strength, he was an invincible existence in the Golden Core stage. No matter how strong Ling Yi was, he could not be a match for such an eccentric person. You flatter me. It's just that my cultivation method is a little special. I can use a secret method to suppress my strength on the surface. Wu Baoyang pretended to be humble and cupped his hands. However, his pair of triangular yin and yang eyes could not hide the pride. This was actually a kind of helplessness, but he did not expect that it would come in handy now. Ever since North Island fled to South Continent, after getting to know the Chung family's father and son and joining the Poison mercenary group, Wu Baoyang had not broken through. Of course, this was only limited to the realm on the surface. In fact, his real strength had been advancing by leaps and bounds. Otherwise, how could he live up to the name of an evil cultivator? He did not do it on purpose, but it was because of his latest improved version of the evil technique. It was only effective for those in the Gold Core stage. Once he broke through to the nascent soul stage, it was not that he couldn't continue to cultivate, but if he wanted to continue dual cultivation with those women, he would have to suck them to death on the spot. The reason why he was exposed in the North Island, it was because of the disappearance and death of a large number of women that they had no choice but to flee to the South Continent. Although the South Continent Sea region was notoriously chaotic, it was inevitable that they would be discovered if they repeated the same trick. If that was the case, even with the protection of the Poison mercenary group, they wouldn't be able to survive. He could not stay in the South Continent for long. Chaos was chaos, but no place would openly tolerate the existence of evil cultivators. Even the seas of the South Continent were no exception. As a result, whether it was Wu Baoyang, Chung Haonan, or even Chung Qitian, who had already died to the Divine Nun of the East Sea, they all used a special secret technique to suppress their cultivation. Currently, their strength remained at the great perfection of Golden Core, but their true strength had already surpassed regular nascent soul cultivators. Wu Baoyang's strength had reached the peak of early nascent soul long ago, and with the power of his evil technique, he could still easily defeat opponents at higher cultivation levels than him, even if it was measured in terms of cultivation. In other words, regular mid-nascent soul cultivators were nowhere near Wu Baoyang's opponent, let alone mere Golden Core cultivators. As for Chung Haonan, the captain of the Poison mercenaries, he also practiced the evil technique that Wu Baoyang had developed and improved. Coupled with his powerful foundation from before, his strength was even greater than Wu Baoyang's. He could easily kill regular peak, mid-nascent soul cultivators instantly. Special cultivation method. Boundless Sea rolled his eyes and immediately burst into laughter as he exposed them. An evil technique is an evil technique. You're being so secretive in front of me. Is this the attitude you have when you're asking for help? This. Wu Baoyang was immediately alarmed. Chung Haonan and Long Kiba's eyes were filled with unconcealable fear as well. They all looked at Boundless Sea cautiously, as if they were facing a great enemy. No matter where evil cultivators went, they would definitely be hated by everyone, which was why they would beat around the bush and use the excuse of a special technique. However, they never thought Boundless Sea would still see through it with a single glance. What were they to do? In the waters of the southern continent, the major escort agencies were undoubtedly the representatives of the righteous. As the saying goes, good and evil cannot coexist. If Boundless Sea really wanted to capture them, it would be a great contribution to the people. If news of this spread, the Four Seas escort agency's reputation would definitely soar. It was very likely that they would snatch the limelight back from the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency and change their previous decline. Thinking of this, the three could not help but break out in cold sweat. They were so focused on getting Boundless Sea's help that they forgot this fatal flaw. This was the headquarters of the Four Seas Escort Agency, where experts would definitely gather. If Boundless Sea really wanted to capture them, the three of them would not even have a chance to escape. This time, they were in big trouble. Long Kiba was slightly better, but at this moment, Chung Haonan and Wu Bao Liang felt as if their hearts had fallen into an ice cellar. In their opinion, Boundless Sea was definitely a person who only cared about profit. If killing them was a great benefit to him, he would not let go of this opportunity. However, the situation was different from what Wu Bao Liang and the others had imagined. Boundless Sea did not immediately make a move. Instead, he looked at the three of them from head to toe and suddenly asked with an unfathomable expression, "How strong is that Ling Yi?" HM. The three of them, who were on high alert, could not help but be stunned. They felt a little strange, but Wu Bao Liang instantly reacted and quickly replied, "Very strong. On the surface, he looks like he is in the Golden Core stage, but our Poison Eye mercenary group's Old Kong is an expert at the peak of the early stage of the nascent soul stage. Now, he has been crippled by him. Many people in Weiwan City know about this, so it is not difficult to verify. So troublesome?" Boundless Sea looked at him suspiciously and pinched his chin with one hand. After pondering for a moment, he said, "All right, I can arrange an opportunity for you to deal with Ling." "Thank you, Chief Escort C." Wu Bao Liang was immediately overjoyed, and he let out a sigh of relief. Fuck, the situation just now was too dangerous. He went around the gates of hell. If he was not careful, he would have died here today. Fortunately, his reaction was fast enough. If you like this work, you are welcome to cast a recommendation vote or monthly vote at Starting Point. Your support is my greatest motivation. For mobile users, please go to M. Chapter 4444. Chung Haonan and Long Kiba were stunned for a moment. Only then did they realize what was going on. They secretly gave Wu Bao Liang a thumbs up. If it wasn't for his timely answer, they would have been dead on the spot. It was obvious that Boundless Sea had wanted to kill them. After all, killing a few evil cultivators could make his Four Seas escort agency famous. There was no reason not to do such a good thing. On the other hand, Boundless Sea didn't want to let go of the opportunity to deal with Ling Yi, so he suddenly asked, if Ling Yi was easy to deal with and his subordinates could deal with him, then he wouldn't need Wu Bao Liang and the others to kill the evil cultivator. However, if Ling Yi wasn't easy to deal with and his subordinates couldn't deal with him, then he would need to weigh the pros and cons. Fortunately, Wu Bao Liang's reaction was fast enough and his answer was witty enough, so they were able to escape. Boundless Sea didn't make a decision that was disadvantageous to them. The reason was simple. If Ling Yi could cripple a peak early-stage nascent soul expert, then a normal Golden Core expert wouldn't be able to deal with him. At least, they wouldn't have a 100% chance of winning. So, if Boundless Sea wanted to deal with Ling Yi, he could only borrow Wu Bao Liang's hand. This way, he wouldn't be disadvantageous to them. In the end, the hatred for Ling Yi surpassed the benefits of killing the evil cultivator. Boundless Sea's decision allowed Wu Bao Liang and the others to escape. I wonder what Chief Escort High's arrangements are. As soon as the crisis was averted, Chung Haonan hurriedly asked impatiently, "Tomorrow is the last round of the competition. The content isn't much different from the past. The entire day will be a challenge. Boundless Sea revealed. Oh, then, Chief Escort C, what are the rules of this challenge? Long Kiba asked. It wasn't just to deal with Ling Yi. He wanted to know the rules of the competition in advance, even if it was just one night earlier. It would also allow him to prepare more carefully, which would affect the final score. The fifth round of the competition is called the Escort Agency Free Challenge. Boundless Sea looked at the three and didn't hide it. It didn't affect him anyway, so it didn't matter if the three knew beforehand. At that time, each escort agency will have 2 chances to challenge other escort agencies. At the same time, they will also have 2 chances to fight. The bet for each match is 100 points. The winner gets 100 points. The loser loses 100 points. The stakes are so high. Long Kiba's eyes immediately lit up when he heard that. If he won all 4 matches, he would be able to obtain a total of 400 points. Especially if the points were plundered from the opponents, the difference would be even greater when the points were added together. Even though the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency was currently outshining the rest of the pack, with a huge gap of 400 points between them and the second-place team, if they played their cards right in the 5th round of the competition, even the Dragon Boat Escort Agency, which only had 110 points, would be able to win. It was not impossible to surpass it. That's right. The previous rounds were just small skirmishes. The last round is the real highlight. This has always been the rule of the South Continent's Escort Agency Grand Gathering. That's why you can use this opportunity to challenge the Equal Heaven Escort Agency. Boundless Sea nodded. Challenging the Equal Heaven Escort Agency is not a problem. However, what if Ling Yi refuses to accept the challenge? Chung Haonan and the others looked at each other worriedly. That was very likely to happen. Just like in the first round, Ling Yi did not personally participate. If it was the same tomorrow, Ling Yi would not be able to participate. If it was the same tomorrow, even if they could steal points from the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency, they would not be able to take the opportunity to kill Ling Yi. That would be too regretful. Don't be in such a hurry. What I just said were the original rules of the competition. However, in order to deal with Ling Yi, I can think of a way to add a special rule. Boundless Sea smiled mysteriously. Oh, what do you think, Chief Escort C? Chung Haonan and the others cooperated and asked. I've already had people investigate beforehand. That Ling Yi's status in the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency is that of an honorary escort head. That's why, in addition to the regular competition, I can add an escort agency head challenge. Boundless Sea narrowed his eyes and sneered. An escort agency head challenge. Chung Haonan and the others were stunned. They did not understand what he meant. It's very simple. The rules of this additional challenge are that all participants can directly challenge the Golden Core Stage upper echelons of each escort agency, including the head escort, deputy escort head, and honorary escort head. Moreover, they can challenge them an unlimited number of times. The escort agency cannot refuse the challenge. After saying this, Boundless Sea could not hide his delight as he took a sip of the high-quality spiritual tea. Chung Haonan, Wu Baoyong, and Long Kiba digested this for a while before they finally understood the huge advantage this special rule brought them. That's great. Chief Escort C, this special rule is practically tailor-made for us. It's very practical. Long Kiba was overjoyed. Then Chief Escort C, when the time comes, as long as we challenge the upper echelons of the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency, Ling Yi will have to accept the challenge. Chung Haonan and Wu Baoyong were also overjoyed. Of course. Otherwise, wouldn't my special rule be for nothing? Boundless Sea smiled coldly. Unless the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency forfeits and is willing to be removed from the Southern Continent Escort Agency Alliance, they will have to follow the rules. Haha, that's right, Chief Escort C is mighty. Chung Haonan and the others laughed in agreement. Coming to the Four Seas Escort Agency was the right decision. Even though there was a slight risk, if they hadn't come, how could they have had such a good opportunity to deal with Ling Yi? With just Chung Haonan and the others' abilities, they might not have had a chance to deal with Ling Yi until the end of the conference. However, things were different in Boundless Sea's hands. He was the chief escort of the Four Seas Escort Agency, the head of the 5 judges of the conference, and the one who set the rules of the game. If he wanted to do something to someone, it was too easy. Moreover, he would say it in a dignified manner. Even if the others were dissatisfied, they couldn't object. Status determined everything. This saying was not false at all. However, what if when the time comes, when we challenge the equal of Heaven Escort Agency's upper echelons, Ling Yi still refuses to accept the challenge and send someone else to fight? Long Kiba was still a little worried. Even if Boundless Sea's special rule was passed, the Southern Continent Escort Agency Grand Conference was a competition between the 32 escort agencies. It wasn't just a display of one person's strength. No matter what competition it was, the premise was that the escort agency was participating. In other words, if Wu Baoyang really wanted to issue a challenge, he could at most challenge the upper echelons of the equal of Heaven Escort Agency. It was unlikely that he would directly challenge Ling Yi. Otherwise, it would become purely a personal grudge. Where would the dignity of the Southern Continent Escort Agency Grand Conference go? Chapter 44-45. Even Boundless Sea wouldn't dare to be so brazen. He kept saying that he wanted to maintain fairness and impartiality. Not to mention, South Continent's Escort Agency Gala wasn't just his word. There were 4 other judges, and Qi Mingyuan was one of them. When the time came, he would definitely stand up and object. This might be a little troublesome, but it's not a big problem. From what I know, among the higher-ups of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, only Qi Wenhan and Ling Yi are in the Golden Core stage. The others aren't, so if you challenge them, it'll be either Qi Wenhan or Ling Yi. Boundless Sea smiled. After suffering such a huge loss at Ling Yi's hands, he had done a lot of homework on the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. It could be said that he knew everything about the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. Only these 2, then it's easy to deal with them. Qi Wenhan is the young master in charge of the agency's affairs. He can't go himself, so the only one left is Ling Yi. Long Kiba immediately became happy. At the same time, he couldn't help but feel ashamed. As an old rival of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, he didn't know as much as Boundless Sea. Boundless Sea was indeed worthy of being the overlord of South Continent's escort agencies. Even if Qi Wenhan goes himself, it doesn't matter. At worst, we'll beat him to the ground and force Ling Yi out. Wu Baoyang said arrogantly. Qi Wenhan and the lights were not in his eyes at all. Even Ling Yi, who had crippled Old Kong, he had never truly taken him to heart. Originally, he had only wanted to take revenge for Cheng Qitian, but today, Cheng Qitian had offended him, so he had no choice but to kill him. WWWW. Thinking of tomorrow's situation, Cheng Haonan and the others couldn't help but laugh at each other, as if they had won a great battle. Cheng Haonan did it for revenge, Wu Baoyang did it to vent his anger, and Long Kiba did it for the rise of the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. As long as they followed the script, there was a 90% chance that their plan would succeed. Maybe even more. This is all I can do to help you guys. Make good use of this opportunity. Don't let me down, Boundless Sea said with a smile. Don't worry, Chief Escort High. As long as we follow the plan, Ling Yi will definitely die. The Heavens Equal Escort Agency won't be able to be proud for long. Long Kiba and the other 2 nodded in unison and said, It's getting late, so we'll be taking our leave. Chief Escort High, just wait for a good show tomorrow. All right, take care. I won't send you off. Boundless Sea smiled as he saw the 3 of them off. Seeing the 3 of them leave, his lips suddenly curved into a mocking smile. A bunch of country bumpkins. Indeed, this special rule of the escort agency's helmsman challenge was something he had only thought of after seeing Cheng Haonan and the other 2. At first glance, this special rule seemed to only target the Heavens Equal Escort Agency and Ling Yi. The biggest beneficiary was the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. This was because Wu Baoyang's strength was only at the Golden Core stage on the surface, but his actual strength was enough to fight against a nascent Soul Stage expert. It would be difficult for other escort agencies to find a second one like him. In a competition where only Golden Core experts could participate, this fellow was undoubtedly an undefeatable killing machine. It would be difficult for other escort agencies to contend against him. Under such circumstances, naturally, the Dragon Boat Escort Agency would have the last laugh. Not only would they be able to trample the Heavens Equal Escort Agency under their feet, but they would also be able to use this opportunity to rise to the top. It was not impossible for them to surpass the traditional wealthy families like the Four Seas Escort Agency. However, what kind of person was Boundless Sea? He was someone who had single-handedly managed the Four Seas Escort Agency to become the overlord of the Southern Continent's escort agencies. How could he be so stupid as to work for someone else? Especially when the three of them were strangers, and they were obviously up to no good. Whether it was Chung Haonan, Wu Bao Liang, or Long Kiba, none of them could be considered stupid. However, when these three were placed together with Boundless Sea, they were really just people who were still counting the money after being sold. Their schemes were not on the same level. The reason why he had proposed this special rule was naturally to deal with Ling Yi and achieve his goal of killing with a borrowed knife. On the other hand, it was to clear the obstacles for his own Four Seas Escort Agency. According to the results of the previous Southern Continent Escort Agency Grand Meetings, the strongest was undoubtedly the Four Seas Escort Agency. Especially since they were fighting on their home ground this time, Boundless Sea had long since thought that the #1 throne was already in his grasp. However, Boundless Sea had never expected that from the start of the second round, the competition would suddenly break out of his control and even develop into such an awkward situation. Seeing that the last round of the competition was about to begin, it was obvious that he had no choice but to use some fierce medicine. In the end, Chung Haonan and the other two just happened to come up. In Boundless Sea's eyes, these three people from the Dragon Boat Escort Agency might be clowns, but they were still a ready-made, sharp knife. Not only could they kill Lin Yi, they could also take down the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, which had suddenly emerged as a new force. And once the super dark horse Heavens Equal Escort Agency was gone, which of the remaining escort agencies could be a match for his Four Seas Escort Agency? As for the Dragon Boat Escort Agency, when the time came, they would swallow up a large amount of points from the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, even if they became the new super dark horse for a short period of time. So what? Boundless Sea wasn't worried about this at all. If it really came to that, all he needed to do was expose Wu Bao Liang's identity as an evil cultivator, and the Dragon Boat Escort Agency would immediately collapse, let alone become the new overlord of the escort agencies. It was unknown whether or not the Dragon Boat Escort Agency could survive the encirclement of all the other escort agencies. After all, escort agencies were publicly recognized as a righteous faction in the South Continent. Which righteous faction would treat an evil cultivator as their trump card? If that wasn't seeking death, then what was? Therefore, no matter what, Boundless Sea felt that he was in an invincible position. As for Chung Haonan and the other two, they were really just pitiful worms that he had sold out and were still counting the money for. The night passed uneventfully. When the sun rose on the second day, Magic Hole Plaza was once again filled with people. The number of people who came from all directions to watch was clearly more than double that of the previous 2 days. Everyone knew that today was the last round of the competition. Who would have the last laugh and become the new overlord of the escort agencies? The mystery would be revealed today. This time, as usual, Boundless Sea appeared and announced the rules of this round to everyone. There weren't many areas that could be changed in the last round of the competition. The judges had already discussed it long ago. Even the spectators, as long as they had a deeper understanding of the South Continent's escort agencies, could roughly guess what was going to happen. However, there were still some people among the people in charge of the escort agencies who raised their doubts. They weren't like the others who were here to watch the show. They had to thoroughly understand the rules of the competition and couldn't make any mistakes. Otherwise, the entire escort agency would be at a disadvantage. Chief Escort High. Since every escort agency only has 2 rights to challenge and 2 rights to be challenged, can we reject the opponent when we're being challenged? Chapter 44-46. One person stood up and asked. Another person also asked in a loud voice. Also, everyone knows that you have to pick the weakest persimmon. What if everyone picks the same opponent and there's a conflict? It's simple. If an escort agency is being challenged, they can't refuse the challenge until they've used up their 2 challenge rights. If more than one agency challenges one agency at the same time, then the agency being challenged can pick the opponent. Boundless Sea replied. With that said, everyone no longer had any doubts. Instead, their faces were filled with wariness. At the same time, they were secretly sizing up the other escort agencies, calculating their next course of action in their hearts. In this final round, the strength of the agency was important, but there was one more important thing: picking the opponent. This was the key to victory. There was no room for negligence. Just as everyone was rubbing their palms together, thinking that the match was about to begin, Boundless Sea suddenly added another rule. It was the same rule he had mentioned to Chung Haonan and the others last night. While everyone was busy digesting this new rule, the 4 referees sitting on the high platform were confused and puzzled. This challenge rule wasn't part of the discussion. They hadn't even heard of it. They hadn't expected Boundless Sea to suddenly do this. He was clearly going to act first and report later. With this, everyone thought that this was the result of the referee's discussion. If they stood up and questioned it, not only would they be publicly slapping their faces, they would also offend Boundless Sea and the 4 Seas escort agency. They might even have to bear the consequences. If the competition went out of control, because of this, no one could take the risk. Thinking of this, Zhao Bufan and the others had ugly expressions, but they endured it. After all, this additional challenge rule didn't really hurt them. Instead, it might be an opportunity. Apart from the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, the other 5 major escort agencies, including the 4 Seas Escort Agency, did not have any golden core stage executives at all. They were all traditional wealthy families, and a golden core stage of strength could only be considered average among the escort agencies, perhaps even below average. If they could not even convince the masses, how could they possibly become executives like the head of an escort agency? As a result, with Boundless Sea's new challenge rule, as long as they weren't stupid, there was no chance of them losing points. On the contrary, if he could find a pushover, he would be able to earn some extra points. In other words, he would be the beneficiary right from the start, so why not? Among the crowd, only Qi Mingyuan's expression changed when he heard this. The other 5 major escort agencies did not have any golden core cultivators, but his Heavens Equal Escort Agency did. Boundless Sea suddenly did this. Qi Mingyuan would be too slow if he couldn't even smell a conspiracy. In fact, the first thought that popped up in his mind was that this was a plot against the equal of Heaven Escort Agency. It would be fine if the number of challenges was directly limited. But the problem was that Boundless Sea had clearly said that any participant could issue a challenge. There was no limit to the number of times. His intentions were sinister. It was obvious. Qi Wenhan and Lin Yi were the only 2 people in the equal of Heaven Escort Agency who could accept the challenge, even with their strength. Given their strength, there shouldn't be many who could match them in the Golden Core stage. But even a tiger couldn't stand up to a pack of wolves. Their chi would eventually run out. They were confident in winning the first 2 or 3 matches, but what about after that? Unlimited challenges. If they really did it this way, as long as these 2 people were exhausted, the other escort agencies that were eyeing them covetously could challenge them endlessly until the end of the conference. It wouldn't matter if they fought for an entire day. As long as they didn't kill both of them, the other escort agencies could continue to challenge them and grind points on them. No matter how big the equal of Heaven Escort Agency's previous advantage was, this little bit of points wouldn't be enough to compensate them. If Qi Mingyuan on stage could think of this, then Qi Wenhan would naturally be able to think of it as well. Furthermore, he was 100% sure that this plot was not directed at him, but at Ling Yi. The tallest tree in the forest was the first to be destroyed by the wind. Previously, Ling Yi had been in the limelight completely by relying on his own strength to turn the equal of Heaven Escort Agency into a super dark horse and trample the 4 Seas Escort Agency underfoot. Boundless Sea had long since flown into a rage out of humiliation. Now that he's suddenly made this move, who else could it be other than Ling Yi? This guy says that he's fair and just, but this challenge rule is clearly aimed at us. He wants to use a tag team battle to tire us out. Since we can't win fair and square, he's using this kind of underhanded method. Too sinister. Qi Wenhan couldn't help but grit his teeth. Qi Wenhan didn't know that in the other side's eyes, there wasn't even a need for a tag team battle. Wu Baoyang alone was enough to take care of him and Ling Yi. As long as one of them was left alive, they could grind points however they wanted. No one could stop them. Looking at the judges' expressions, this rule was probably added by Boundless Sea himself. This guy is a bit too unscrupulous. Lin Yi couldn't help but frown. Disregarding everything else, this was filled with the smell of a conspiracy. The feeling of being maliciously targeted really didn't sit well with him. Yeah, such a big thing. Why didn't old dad say anything? Qi Wenhan muttered. Before he finished speaking, Qi Mingyuan suddenly stood up on the stage. He was one of the 5 judges, after all. Facing such a malicious rule, how could he not retaliate? Qi Mingyuan wasn't a turtle hiding in its shell. Head escort high. This challenge rule for the head of an escort agency seems to be incomplete. It needs to be amended, Qi Mingyuan said after clearing his throat. The entire crowd was in an uproar. Everyone looked at each other in confusion. In the past, the ones who had asked this question were the people in charge of the escort agencies. Why was it Qi Mingyuan's turn this time? He was one of the people who had set the rules. There was no way he didn't know, right? For a moment, everyone's gazes turned thoughtful. The smart ones had already realized that there was something fishy about this. Oh, what do you think, head escort Qi? Boundless Sea raised his eyebrows. He was sure that Qi Mingyuan wouldn't be willing to suffer a loss. He would definitely retaliate. However, he had already prepared an excuse, so he wasn't worried at all. Chapter 44-47. Now that things had come to this, he knew that it was unrealistic to completely negate this rule. The only thing he could do now was to minimize the unfavorable side of himself. Points. Boundless Sea pretended to laugh and shook his head. Head escort Qi, you're thinking too much. The strength of all the participants must be limited to the Golden Core stage. As a Golden Core stage executive, if I can't even beat an opponent of the same level and even have my points grinded away, isn't that a little too incompetent? What's the point of keeping such an incompetent executive? It's a good thing for every escort agency to get rid of this piece of trash early on. Head Qi, you're mistaken. If it's a limited number of 1v1 matches, then there's nothing to say if you lose. But if someone wants to drag you down with them, then no matter how strong you are, you'll eventually get tired. If you can't even guarantee fairness, then what's the point of this competition? Qi Mingyuan sneered. Seeing everyone nod their heads, Boundless Sea couldn't help but stare blankly. He reevaluated Qi Mingyuan. He didn't think that this guy, who came from a martial arts background, would have such sharp words. Oh, head Qi, why are you so agitated? Could it be that your interests have been harmed? Are you afraid that the Golden Core stage executive of your Heaven's Equal Escort Agency will become an opening for others? You're one of the 5 great escort agencies. Why are you so unconfident? Boundless Sea asked back with interest. Head Qi, you're overthinking it. I'm just stating the facts. I have to fulfill my duty as a judge. Qi Mingyuan replied with a straight face. All right, if Head Qi says that, then I'll also discuss the facts with you. The purpose of the Southern Continent Escort Agency Grand Conference is to test and improve the strength of each escort agency. As long as it's something that might happen in real life, it can be included in the competition. This is the principle. I'm sure Head Qi doesn't have any objections. Boundless Sea said confidently. No. Qi Mingyuan shook his head. Then let me ask you, when the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency is escorted by the pirates, won't they take turns to fight you? They wouldn't be so reasonable as to negotiate a 1v1 with you as courts and even decide the winner in one match, right? Boundless Sea sneered. The audience roared with laughter. Who would want to be a pirate? Not to mention deciding the winner in one match. Even a one-on-one match was nonsense. The pirates had always bullied with numbers. This, Chi Mingyuan suddenly choked. He was stunned for a moment before he said, "Even so, since it's a fair and just competition, the rules can't possibly leave such an obvious loophole. Wouldn't that allow people to blatantly farm points?" At Escort Chi, you keep talking about loopholes and points. Aren't you feeling too guilty? Are you afraid that your own heavens equal escort agency won't do? Boundless Sea didn't try to hide his ridicule. Our South Continent Sea region is a place where the weak are prey to the strong. Let's not talk about whether or not there are any loopholes for people to farm points. Even if there are, everyone can use the rules to their advantage. In the end, it would only lead to one result. The weak would become weaker, and the strong would become stronger. Everyone would clearly know who is strong and who is weak. There doesn't seem to be anything wrong with that, right? Chi Mingyuan looked at everyone's reactions. Seeing that many people were nodding in agreement, his heart couldn't help but sink. For a moment, he didn't know how to refute. Boundless Sea's words could be said elsewhere. Perhaps he would be criticized for not being righteous. But in the South Continent Sea region, it just so happened to be the rule that everyone followed. Everyone did it themselves, so naturally, no one would object. Of course, nothing can be accomplished without rules. This challenge for the head of the escort agency will be decided by drawing lots. Everyone will compete fairly based on their strength. Head Escort Chi, do you have any other opinions? How about we let the other judges vote together in front of everyone? Boundless Sea glanced at Chi Mingyuan. No need. There was no need to ask Zhao, Bufan, and the others' opinions. It was clear from their tacit agreement just now. Even a public vote wouldn't change the result. It would only make this rule more convincing. However, Chi Mingyuan couldn't just give up so easily. He turned and said, "I just want to add one last point. The higher-ups of the escort agency should have a chance to breathe during the match, right?" The situation was already completely under the opponent's control, let alone completely rejecting this challenge rule. Chi Mingyuan knew that simply changing it wasn't realistic. Since things had already reached this point, he could only do it piecemeal and try to fight for one last chance. A chance to breathe? Boundless Sea's eyebrows jumped. He casually refuted. Are all the pirates that your escort agency meets so reasonable? Why would they give you a chance to breathe? What's impossible? Chi Mingyuan retorted. In reality, the pirates won't talk reason with us, but in reality, several escorts will fight together. If they run out of manpower, they can naturally retreat and rest. Is that so strange? Everyone nodded in agreement. After all, the leader of the escort agency was challenged by a senior Golden Core cultivator of the agency alone. If he was challenged consecutively and not given a chance to catch his breath, it would be somewhat unreasonable. That's a bit reasonable. Boundless Sea saw everyone's reactions and knew that he couldn't go overboard. In any case, a small concession didn't matter. So he said, "If you want a chance to breathe, that's fine. But you can't rest forever. After all, if you really encounter pirates, you'll have no choice but to fight after a short rest. Otherwise, your companions will all die. Then how much time do you think is appropriate, Chief Escort High?" Chi Mingyuan stared at Boundless Sea. "A stick of incense. It can't be longer than that," Boundless Sea insisted. He glanced at Chi Mingyuan disdainfully. "Chief Escort Chi, do you have any more questions?" Chi Mingyuan originally wanted to argue a little more, but he sensed Boundless Sea's ill intentions. He suddenly shivered. He was afraid that Boundless Sea wouldn't say much and would directly ask the judges to raise their hands to decide, or even accuse him of something. If that was the case, he wouldn't have to try. He could only choose to stop before going too far. Very good. Since there are no more questions, then everyone prepare yourselves. The 5th round of the escort agency competition is about to begin. Boundless Sea smiled proudly. At the same time, he didn't hide his disdain at Chi Mingyuan. A martial artist was a martial artist. How dare he quarrel with me in public? Why don't you take a piss and look at yourself? Do you have the brains to do so? The audience discussed animatedly. They weren't looking forward to the upcoming escort agency competition, but rather the meaning behind boundless sea and Qiming Yuan sharp words just now. It was too thought-provoking. Chapter 44-48. At this point, anyone with a bit of knowledge could tell that the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency was being specially targeted this time. The challenge of the leader of the escort agency was almost tailor-made for them. In the eyes of other escort agencies, the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency was a piece of juicy meat. After 4 rounds of competition, the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency had a huge lead of 400 points over the second-place team. Originally, they had already secured the first-place spot. However, the situation had changed once again. The existence of this final challenge would make the impossible possible in the end. Even Father can't do anything about it. This is really troublesome. When Qi Wenhan saw this scene, his expression immediately became more and more unsightly. He scratched his head and paced back and forth. "Brother Qi, you don't have to worry. Since things have come to this, there's nothing more to say. We'll deal with whatever comes our way," comforted Lin Yi. "That's what you say, but to see the great situation that Brother Ling painstakingly created be wiped out in such a shameless way, I really can't accept it," Qi Wenhan said angrily as he pounded his fist. Last time, he and the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency were lucky enough to be ranked last among the top 5 escort agencies. This was already an unexpected surprise for him and the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. This time, because of Lin Yi's existence, after 4 rounds, they had become the dark horse with the highest hopes of becoming the number 1. This feeling was like a dream. But now, Boundless Sea's simple challenge was going to shatter this dream. Who would be willing to accept this? "Brother Qi, I don't think there's a need to act like a little girl. Since they're deliberately targeting us, we'll just fight them 1 match at a time. For us, this is also a rare opportunity to score points, isn't it?" Lin Yi smiled. "But what if they are really so shameless? What if you brazenly use attrition warfare to wear them down?" Qi Wenhan was still indignant. After a moment of silence, he suddenly said resolutely, "Brother Ling, I can see that this matter is obviously aimed at you. I am truly sorry. You are participating in the competition for our escort agency, but instead you are being treated as the bird that sticks out. How about this? If someone challenges you later, you will be the one that sticks out. I'll take the lead." After all, he was the young master of the escort agency. Although he was still furious, Qi Wenhan's mental fortitude was far above that of an ordinary person. He quickly suppressed his anger and regained his rationality and calmness. Now that the situation had developed to this point, the ranking and points that he and the entire Heaven's Equal Escort Agency had previously placed so much importance on were no longer important. Today was the final battle. Even if they were defeated, it would be a glorious defeat. After all, everyone present could tell that the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency was being maliciously targeted. That was why they were dragged down from their throne. At the very least, the previous 4 rounds of the competition were enough to engrave the name of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency into the hearts of the people. The winner was the king, and the loser was the bandit. It would more or less affect the escort agency's business, and even block the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency's future prospects. However, it wouldn't be much worse than the current situation. At most, he would develop in the Verdunark Sea region. There would be a foothold there, and he wouldn't lose his job. In comparison, Qi Wenhan was most worried about Lin Yi's safety. Back then, Lin Yi had only agreed to participate in the South Continent Escort Agency's grand event after his repeated pleas. Lin Yi had made such a great contribution. If Lin Yi were to lose his life because of this, then the entire Heaven's Equal Escort Agency would not be able to atone for their sins, even if they died 10,000 times. Brother Qi, you're the young master in charge of the overall situation. How can you personally participate in the competition? However, Lin Yi laughed and patted Qi Wenhan's shoulder. Since you said that you're here for me, I naturally have to participate. Otherwise, if I don't participate, these people will be very disappointed. They might even beat you to death. That's... Qi Wenhan froze, speechless for a moment. What Lin Yi said wasn't impossible, it was highly possible. According to the challenge rules, there was no limit to the number of times a contestant could challenge a golden core stage senior of an escort agency. Even if they couldn't directly challenge Ling Yi, if Qi Wenhan were to challenge him first, the other party could easily kill him. If they continued to challenge him, Ling Yi would have no choice but to fight. So in the end, I still have to participate. Rather than taking such a meaningless and unnecessary risk, it's better to let me participate directly, Lin Yi said lightly. Sigh. Qi Wenhan could only sigh deeply and didn't say anything else. He didn't know what to say. Just as Lin Yi said, even if he, the young master of the escort agency, took the lead, he wouldn't be able to change the situation. What could he do? Could he just resign himself to fate? Qi Wenhan frowned. On the other hand, Lin Yi, who was in the eye of the storm, was calm and unperturbed by the situation. In reality, after hearing Boundless Sea's challenge rules, Lin Yi's first reaction wasn't one of worry. Rather, he was quite happy. Although Lin Yi's strength was only at the middle stage of the Golden Core stage, he was the strongest Golden Core expert who had a perfect breakthrough. Coupled with his various trump cards, it was more than enough to say that he was invincible in the Golden Core stage. Moreover, Lin Yi wasn't like other experts. He wasn't afraid of taking turns to fight. With the endless supply of Qi from the Jade Pendant, basically, no matter how many Golden Core opponents there were, they would all end up the same. They would be easily killed by Lin Yi, and at the same time, the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency would gain a lot of points. There was no other possibility. More importantly, Wu Baoyang was the military advisor of the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. He was also part of the upper echelons of the agency. At the same time, he was also a Golden Core expert, which was completely in line with the challenge rules. Since others could challenge Lin Yi, naturally, Lin Yi could also challenge Wu Baoyang. This was a very rare opportunity. He had come all the way to the South Continent Sea to represent the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency in this South Continent Escort Agency Grand Conference. Wasn't it to deal with Wu Baoyang? Just like Chung Haonan and the others, who were having a headache about how to ensure that they could face Lin Yi was also having a headache about this. However, he didn't take the side road like the others. Instead, he wanted to let nature take its course. It would be great if he could meet Wu Baoyang, but if he couldn't, then he would think of another way. Even Lin Yi didn't expect this to happen. Everything was supposed to depend on luck, but a turning point like this popped up out of nowhere. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and since they'd sent themselves to his doorstep, there was no reason for Lin Yi to reject them. Chapter 44-49. But Qi Wenhan still wasn't at ease. He couldn't think of an effective countermeasure right now, but he couldn't just stand by and watch Lin Yi get attacked. He couldn't just stand by and do nothing, not even if he was beaten to death. In the worst-case scenario, even if he knew it would be useless, he had to take the lead. Even if it meant risking his life, he had to let everyone know that the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency's men were not to be provoked or bullied by anyone. No buts. Lin Yi cut him off without hesitation. Instead of worrying over nothing, Brother Qi, you should calm your heart down and think about the upcoming competition. That's what you should be doing right now. All right then. We'll talk about this after the competition. Qi Wenhan's attention was immediately diverted. No matter how dangerous the challenge of the leader of the escort agency was, it was something to worry about later. The most important thing now was to think about how to deal with the competition. Putting aside the controversial additional challenge, the fifth round of the escort agency tournament was the highlight of the entire South Continent's escort agency festival. Not only did it determine the rankings, but it also showcased the true strength of each agency in this round of competition. 5 against 5. The rules are basically the same as the first round's escort robbery, but there's one less escort and a different scoring system. Qi Wenhan quickly got into the zone and analyzed. That's right. Although there's also a time limit of 1 incense stick, it doesn't count into points. Between the two escort agencies, the one with the most survivors will be the winner, and the winner will take 100 points from the loser. It doesn't seem like a big difference at first glance, but in terms of specific strategies, it's actually completely different. We'll have to make some adjustments. Lin, he nodded. That's right. Brother Ling, you're an expert in this field. I'll listen to whatever you say. Qi Wenhan hurriedly asked humbly. How am I an expert in this field? I was just lucky. Lin Yi broke into laughter. He had only been acting as an on-the-spot coach on the spur of the moment, but now he was being treated as an expert. Brother Ling, you don't have to be so humble. The battle results are right there, and this is irrefutable evidence. No matter how humble you are, it's useless. Everyone can see it for themselves. Am I right? Qi Wenhan shouted at the escorts beside him. Yes, everyone agreed in unison. They couldn't help but be impressed. Lin Yi's on-the-spot guidance in the first round of robbing the escorts was indeed very effective, and the results could not be said to be bad, especially when Qi Wenhan, the young master, supervised the escort guarding battle. When the two were put side by side, it was obvious who was superior. To the crowd, this wasn't just a mere compliment. It was something that would benefit them greatly. Based on their performance in the first round of robbing, if Lin Yi had been in command, they would have been able to survive. However, if Qi Wenhan, the young master, had been in command, but at least half of them would die. The difference between coming and going was huge. For these participating escorts, it could be the difference between life and death. All right. Faced with everyone's expectant and excited gazes, Lin Yi had no choice but to surrender and agree. I will do my best to give advice and suggestions for everyone. That should be fine, right? The escorts instantly cheered, attracting the attention of the bystanders. They all looked at each other. These people from the Heavens Equal Escort Agency must have taken the wrong medicine. The battle hadn't even started, and they were already celebrating in advance? Brother Ling, quickly tell us, how should we deal with this escort agency competition? Qi Wenhan asked impatiently. There are two aspects. The on-the-spot battle is one aspect, and the planning outside the arena is the other. From a certain perspective, the latter may be more important than the former, because the former is only a tactic, while the latter is a strategy. Lin immediately stopped trying to shirk his responsibility and analyzed the situation for the crowd. The crowd listened and looked at each other. Some nodded as if they understood, while others were completely confused. They had no idea what Lin Yi was talking about. What Brother Ling means is that the most important thing is to make good use of the two opportunities to challenge and be challenged. Qi Wenhan understood immediately. That's right. The planning outside the arena determines the overall situation. If we can make good use of these four opportunities, we can achieve twice the results with half the effort and take the initiative. Otherwise, it will be troublesome. Lin Yi nodded. The crowd finally understood. The rules of the escort agency competition only stated that each agency had 2 opportunities to challenge and 2 opportunities to be challenged. However, there were no restrictions on who would issue the challenge first or who would issue the challenge first. In other words, it was up to each agency to decide. In this case, the waters were getting deeper and deeper. For the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, there was nothing much to be said about the right to be challenged twice. They could only accept the challenge passively and did not have much of a choice. However, as for how to use the right to challenge twice, they would have to plan carefully. Who do we challenge? When do we issue the challenge? Qi Wenhan immediately grasped the crux of the problem. That's right. As long as we can handle these 2 key issues, everything else will naturally be solved, Lin Yi praised. Qi Wenhan could not help but fall into deep thought. These 2 issues did not seem difficult. If he followed his train of thought, there would only be 2 strategies, one conservative and one radical. If they were more conservative, they would naturally be picking on the weaker ones. As long as they challenged the weaker escort agencies, their Heavens Equal Escort Agency strength would be enough to guarantee them 2 victories. As for the remaining 2 chances of being challenged, they only needed to give it their all and fight as many battles as they could. In this way, with the first 2 victories, even if he lost the next 2 rounds, he could at least guarantee that he would not lose any points in this round of the escort agency competition. Due to the huge advantage accumulated in the first 4 rounds, Even if the second-place Divine Wind Escort Agency won all 4 rounds, they would at most obtain 670 points, which was just enough to tie with the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. In other words, the worst result after the 5 rounds was to tie with the Divine Wind Escort Agency for first place, which was nothing unacceptable. This was the most conservative strategy. Apart from this, there was another more radical strategy, which was to not challenge the smaller agencies. Instead, they would directly challenge the prestigious agencies that could pose a threat to them. For example, if the second-place Divine Wind Escort Agency won, then they would be able to take first place without any suspense. Of course, everything had its pros and cons. If they failed, then they would have to bear the risk of being overtaken by the prestigious agencies. Not only would they not be able to maintain first place, but they might not even be able to maintain second or third place. Chapter 4450. If Chi Wen-han had to choose, he would definitely choose the first option to play it safe. However, with Lin Yi, who could turn something rotten into something magical, Chi Wen-han felt that even if he were to go up against a wealthy escort agency, his chances of winning would not be that low. After all, in the long run, if the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency wanted to truly rise, they would have to go up against these traditional wealthy escorts. If they kept retreating, they would forever be a fake wealthy escort agency and would never be able to truly become a force to be reckoned with. Moreover, there was another factor that had to be taken into consideration. The upcoming challenge for the head of the escort agency was clearly disadvantageous to them, so they had to prepare well beforehand. The greater their advantage in points, the more confidence they would have when the time came. Brother Ling, what strategy do you have in mind? Chi Wen-han pondered for a long time, but ultimately could not decide. He could only ask Lin Yi for help. My strategy is very simple. Let's wait and see. Lin Yi smiled faintly. How exactly? Chi Wen-han asked hurriedly. The rules of the competition did not state that we have to make a decision within a certain period of time. We can just bide our time and see how the other agencies fare, Lin Yi said with a smile. But what if all the easy targets are snatched up by others, and what's left are hard bones to chew? What should we do then? Chi Wen-han could not help but worry. Each escort agency only had 2 chances to be challenged. Once the opportunity to challenge the weaker agencies was snatched up by the other agencies, it would be too late for the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency to regret their decision. Brother Chi, do you think we, the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, are strong or weak among the 32 escort agencies? Lin Yi glanced at Chi Wen-han. He did not answer, but asked instead. This, of course we are strong. Chi Wen-han hesitated for a moment, then immediately insisted. Since we are strong, we should have the temperament of a strong one. Taking advantage of others is the right of the weak. It has nothing to do with us. Keep an eye on the truly threatening competitors, then wait for the right opportunity to strike. This is what we should be doing, Lin Yi said faintly. Brother Ling's advice is enlightening. I have learned a lot. Chi Wen-han was finally enlightened. In front of everyone, he bowed deeply to Lin Yi. Before this, his mentality had always been at the bottom of the 5 major escort agencies. He didn't have much confidence when facing those traditional wealthy families. However, after hearing Lin Yi's words, he came to a realization and broke out in cold sweat. He was 400 points ahead of the runner-up. If it wasn't for someone maliciously targeting him, he would have already secured the first place. As the young master of such an escort agency, if he didn't even have this little bit of magnanimity, he wouldn't be able to do so. How could he achieve greatness in the future? As the two of them spoke, Shanghai Wuliang had already announced the highly anticipated 5th round of the Escort Agency Championship. It had officially begun. As soon as Boundless Sea finished speaking, the representatives of the 5 escort agencies stood up at almost the same time and impatiently issued their challenges. They were challenging the same escort agency, 10,000 Miles Escort Agency. He was ranked 32nd. The total score of the 4 rounds was 0. This was one of all the escort agencies. It was the only escort agency that did not have a single cent And the weakest among the 32 escort agencies was none other than the 10,000 Miles Escort Agency. As a small escort agency that was barely qualified to join the South Escort Agency Alliance, its combat strength was already so weak that it made people's hair stand on end. After the third round of the test of the escort's loyalty, all 10 of the participating escorts defected, and the morale of the escort agency hit rock bottom. From the head of the escort agency to the ordinary escorts, all of them were dispirited and despondent. Any passerby could see that this 10,000 Miles Escort Agency was a piece of juicy meat. Anyone could easily snatch it away. There was no difficulty to speak of. The others didn't have the resolve of a powerhouse like the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. Only an idiot wouldn't fight over 100 points. They're like dogs fighting over food. They don't give us any face at all. He couldn't help but laugh when he saw the depressed expression on the head escort's face. It's no wonder they're so nervous. Although every escort agency has 2 chances to be challenged, when it comes to the 10,000 Miles Escort Agency, there's clearly only 1 chance. If we miss this opportunity, we won't get another one. Chi Wen-han nodded. According to the rules of the Southern Continent Escort Agency Conference, if an escort agency had a negative score, the competition would be terminated and they would be eliminated. The 10,000 Miles Escort Agency had 0 points right now. It could still be challenged by other escort agencies, but once its score dropped to negative 100 points, it would be eliminated. The other escort agencies wouldn't be able to gain points from it. Being challenged by 5 escort agencies in one go made him the center of attention. Everyone was pointing at him. This feeling was so depressing that he wanted to die. The 10,000 Miles Escort Agency hesitated for a long time before they finally chose one of the weaker escort agencies. The 2 sides began to fight. Of course, none of the 5 escort agencies that jumped out to challenge the 10,000 Miles Escort Agency were among the top 5 escort agencies. After all, they were all wealthy escort agencies. If they behaved in an unsightly manner, they would be ridiculed by others. Chi Wen-han looked at Lin Yi gratefully when he saw this. If it weren't for Lin Yi's advice, he might have jumped out as well. Even if he didn't win this opportunity, his Heavens Equal Escort Agency would definitely become a laughingstock. The results of the opening match of the Escort Agency tournament were quickly revealed. The 10,000 Miles Escort Agency was in no mood to continue fighting. In the face of their ferocious opponents, they were powerless to resist. After surrendering 100 points, they were unsurprisingly eliminated. Following that, the eyes of the other agencies immediately turned to the next pushover. For most of the people in charge of the escort agencies, nothing else mattered except for the points they had earned. This time, the top 5 escort agencies still did not budge. Of course, it would be useless even if they joined in. Unless they were crazy, these popular agencies would never pick them as opponents. Not only would they not gain any opportunity by joining in, but they would also become a laughingstock. These were all experienced and astute traditional wealthy agencies. They were not stupid. Just as Lin Yi expected, the 5th round of the Escort Agency Conference had been dominated by the lower-ranked agencies. After a full 2 hours, the top 5 escort agencies finally made their appearance. The first to take the stage was the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, which was like the sun in the sky. They did not take the initiative, but were challenged by someone else. Their opponent was an old rival from the first round, the Noon Horse Escort Agency. This time, the Heavens Equal Escort Agency was caught unprepared. After all, according to Lin Yi's strategy, he was prepared to wait for the other competitors to make the first move. Now, however, they had no choice but to accept the challenge. R655. Chapter 4451. Is there something wrong with the Noon Horse Agency? They lost to us in the first round, and now they're biting us like rabid dogs. They even challenged us. Do they think we're pushovers? Chi Wen-han said angrily. He was really a little apprehensive about this erratic Meridian Horse Escort Agency. Although he won the first battle, he paid the price of 3 lives. It can only be said to be a Pyrrhic victory. If they were to fight again, he really did not dare to guarantee that he would win. In reality, The Noon Horse Agency was a classic example of strength being greater than reputation. Although they had placed 11th in the last competition, they were definitely in the top 10 in terms of strength. They're doing this to make a name for themselves. We're just being used as a stepping stone. Lin E glanced at the ranking. The Noon Horse Agency had a total of 160 points. It was ranked 13th out of all the agencies. Compared to its strength, it was not considered outstanding. It could barely be considered average. If it continued to develop normally, the Noon Horse Agency's best result would be to just barely squeeze into the top 10. As for becoming one of the top 5 agencies, that was pure wishful thinking. They had strength, but their points were not ideal. Seeing that there weren't many opportunities left, they might as well challenge the highly anticipated Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. This was the fastest way to increase their influence. Stepping stone? How dare they? Shi Wenhan became even more furious. The Noon Horse Escort Agency was like a scar in his eyes. Every time he thought about how they had won the first round, he couldn't help but feel a little angry. His shame turned into anger, especially since the other party had climbed all over him and used his Heaven's Equal Escort Agency as a stepping stone. Brother Chi, there's no need to be angry. From her point of view, it's not wrong to think that way. First, although our points are high, we're just a dark horse in everyone's eyes. Our strength hasn't been truly recognized. Second, our performance in the first round may have made them feel that our strength is just so. That's all there is to it. Lenny smiled indifferently. Oomph, those snobbish bastards. Shi Wenhan snorted coldly, unable to speak. Who told him to not perform well in the first round, giving the other party a chance to take advantage of him. However, being angry was just being angry. When he really had to face this Noon Horse Escort Agency, Shi Wenhan was still a little afraid. It was like a hedgehog with spikes all over its body, making people unable to bite it. Shi Wenhan did not have the slightest intention to challenge it, but now the other party was taking advantage of him. Instead, they had taken the initiative to stick to him. There was no way to avoid them. Now that things have come to this, there's no need to think about anything else. This battle is of utmost importance. As long as we do well, it'll be enough to serve as a deterrent to the other escort agencies, preventing them from acting rashly. However, if we make a mistake, the consequences will be unimaginable, Lin Yi said solemnly to everyone. Everyone nodded. His Heaven's Equal Escort Agency had been in the limelight for the past 4 rounds of the competition. However, they did not have a strong record of fighting head-on battles. There were probably many people who were secretly dissatisfied with them, but they did not know what was going on. He just didn't dare to act rashly. This time, if the Noon Horse Escort Agency managed to create an opening, then in the eyes of the other escort agencies, the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, which was at its peak, would no longer be the insufferably arrogant tyrant of the escort agencies. Instead, it was a delicious piece of juicy meat. Any escort agency with the slightest bit of ambition would definitely not let go of this excellent opportunity to make a name for themselves. He would definitely rush up and take a bite. Soldiers are trained for 1,000 days to be used in a single day. Brothers of the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency, it's time for you to come in. Just like before, everyone who goes up to fight will be rewarded with 50,000 spirit jades. Those who are willing to fight, step forward. Shi Wenhan shouted in encouragement. Yes, everyone responded in unison. Without hesitation, they stood up and lined up. Everything else aside, the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency's sincerity towards the escorts under their command was not inferior to any other escort agency. They all had the same thought about fighting for the agency. It was worth it. Lin Yi raised an eyebrow at the scene. There were more than 30 escorts present, and all of them were willing to fight for the agency. This level of morale was incomparable to that of the other escort agencies. Even the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency from 2 days ago could not compare to this level of morale. It was clear that the cohesiveness of these 2 days was not insignificant. Very good. This scene was beyond Shi Wenhan's expectations. He was overjoyed and turned to Lin Yi. Brother Ling, I'll leave the rest to you. including me. Whoever you say will go up. How you say we should fight, we'll fight. Ha, Brother Chi, you can forget about it. If the young master of an escort agency has to fight personally, no matter who wins or loses, others will look down on him. Lin, he shook his head and laughed. He swept his gaze across the escorts in front of him and finally picked out 5 of them. 1 Golden Core Paragon, 2 at the peak of the late Golden Core Realm, and 2 at the late Golden Core Realm. This was the lineup that Lin Yi had chosen. This level of strength could be considered as the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency's first echelon, but it was definitely not the strongest lineup. Lin Yi was deliberately conserving his strength. This was only the first round of the competition. He could not act like a gambler and go all out. After all, these escorts were not like Lin Yi himself. After a battle, his inner chi would be almost completely depleted, and he would not be able to recover in a short period of time. He could only rest on the sidelines, unable to continue fighting. Well, will this work? Qi Wenhan asked worriedly in a low voice. In his mind, even a lion would use its full strength to capture a rabbit. Moreover, the other party was from the horse escort agency, and they were not easy targets. If he underestimated them, he could easily lose. Regardless of whether it will work or not, I've already chosen them. I can't just change them at the last minute, can I? That's a taboo. Lin Yi looked at him with a playful expression. Oh. Only then did Qi Wenhan react. He hurriedly covered his mouth in apology. Before, he had already said that he would leave everything to Lin Yi. If he interjected now, he would be eating his own words. Who did he want everyone to listen to? At this time, the staff of the convention came over to urge everyone to go up on stage. On the other side, the 5 participating escorts from the horse escort agency were already valiantly standing on the stage. Fuck, they're all men of sacrifice. No wonder this agency is famous for being crazy. Every single one of them is a lunatic. Qi Wenhan's eyelid twitched as he watched. The opponent's lineup consisted of 1 Golden Core Paragon, 1 at the peak of the late Golden Core Realm, and 3 at the late Golden Core Realm. In terms of strength, there was not much difference between their side. However, the aura that these 5 people exuded was clearly written on their faces. They were unafraid of death. 1 was a man of sacrifice, and 1 was an ordinary person. Even if their strength was the same, if they really fought, the man of sacrifice would definitely have a higher chance of winning. This was inevitable. Chapter 4452. When Qi Wenhan was guarding the escort, he had suffered this loss. This was also the reason why the Noon Horse Escort Agency was regarded as a tough nut to crack. Qi Wenhan could not help but feel a little guilty. The strength of the 5 participating escorts on his side was about the same as the other party, but if they really fought, they might be at a disadvantage. It looks like the Noon Horse Escort Agency has brainwashed these escorts quite a bit. Lin Yi was slightly taken aback by the situation, but he did not reveal the slightest hint of worry. His expression remained the same. Brainwashing? Qi Wenhan thought for a moment before he understood what the term meant. He nodded heavily. Yes, brainwashing. I heard that the Noon Horse Escort Agency is managed like a military. 3 times a day, in the morning, afternoon, and evening, the higher-ups of the agency have to give lectures. All they say is to be loyal to the agency and die for it. This kind of opponent is indeed not easy to deal with. The formation of death warriors is indomitable and unstoppable. Unless the opponent's strength is much higher than theirs, the average expert will be at a disadvantage. Lin Yi nodded thoughtfully and turned to the participating escorts beside him. The 5 of you, what do you think? We'll follow escort leader Ling's instructions. The 5 participating escorts replied in unison. All right, let me ask a little aside first. Do you usually play games? Games that children often play, such as drawing a circle and chasing around in circles? Lin Yi suddenly asked with interest. Play games? The 5 participating escorts, as well as Qi Wenhan and the others beside him, were instantly dumbfounded. Yes, we play games. I was thinking, since the other party is so aggressive, how about we play a game with them first? Lin he said seriously. The crowd was speechless and looked at each other. If it was not for Lin Yi's miraculous performance that had convinced them, they would have suspected that there was something wrong with this guy's brain. Finally, under the staff's repeated urging, the 5 participating escorts of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency slowly walked onto the stage with a strange expression on their faces. Meanwhile, Lin Yi, Qi Wenhan, and the others stood by the side of the stage to supervise the match. What the hell are you so slow for? No matter what, you're still the super dark horse of this year's grand meeting. Don't tell me that your equal of Heaven Escort Agency is feeling guilty and afraid of our Noon Horse Escort Agency? The head escort of the Noon Horse Escort Agency, Wu Tsonglong, who was supervising the battle, opened his mouth and ridiculed in an overbearing manner. Others might be intimidated by the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency's heaven-defying momentum, but Wu Tsonglong wouldn't be. Looking at the previous South Continent Escort Agency Grand Meetings, the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency had never been able to gain an advantage over him. It was the same this year as well. How strong was the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency? He knew this much better than the average person. It's not an important match anyway. The result has already been decided. Let's take it slow. What does it matter if it's a little earlier or a little later? Lin Yi replied with a faint smile. There was an uproar outside. Based on the current rankings, the Noon Horse Escort Agency was indeed not even worthy of carrying the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency's shoes. However, everyone knew that the Noon Horse Escort Agency was a tough nut to crack, even if it was the Four Seas Escort Agency. They didn't dare to underestimate him too much. Wasn't he a little too arrogant? You've only managed to scrape up a lot of points by sheer luck. You haven't even fought a proper battle. You're not that strong, but you sure are arrogant. Wu Tsonglong was instantly enraged. He was the absolute ruler of the Noon Horse Escort Agency. Once he lost his temper, the 5 men of sacrifice on the field would immediately put on an attitude of submission. He immediately assumed the attitude of a subordinate who would die if his master was humiliated. Like a mad dog, he could not wait to skin the people from the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency alive. If an average person stood in front of them, they would probably be so scared that they wouldn't even be able to stand. Even though the 5 escorts that Lin Yi had picked were not cowards, they still felt like mice meeting a cat in front of these people. They did not seem to be evenly matched opponents at all. A passerby agency that has only scored 160 points, which is only a fraction of our total points, yet you're saying that we're arrogant. I'm speechless. I can only reply with 2 words, hee. Lin Yi continued to laugh mockingly. His calm and condescending attitude infuriated Wu Tsonglong to no end. At this moment, the audience had a completely different feeling. Although the head of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency was talking tough, the 5 participating escorts on the field were all cowering in fear. It was as if they were frightened by the other party. No matter how they looked at it, this was not the demeanor of the best escort agency. You have a sharp tongue. You still dare to laugh at me? Let's see if you can still laugh later. Wu Tsonglong sneered and suddenly shouted, Brothers, they're the best escort agency, and they're looking down on the Noon Horse Escort Agency. What do you think we should do? Whoever dares to humiliate the Noon Horse Escort Agency will be crushed to pieces. The 5 escorts on the field roared in unison. They're really poisoned. This brainwashing. TSK. Lenny couldn't help but shake his head and laugh at this scene. He didn't say anything else because his goal had been achieved. The match had officially begun. As soon as the referee gave the order, a long stick of incense was lit at the side of the arena. The 5 horse escorts on the arena couldn't wait any longer. They roared angrily and pounced on the 5 members of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. In front of their ferocious momentum, the 5 members of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency were like quails. They didn't have any morale to resist. The Heaven's Equal Escort Agency isn't a fake, is it? The audience couldn't help but look at each other in dismay. What happened next only confirmed their suspicions. Facing the menacing Noon Horse Escort Agency, the 5 escorts from the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency didn't have the awareness of the experts of the 5 Great Escort Agency. Their reactions were even worse than the weakest 10,000-mile escort agency. They didn't even think about fighting back. Instead, they turned tail and ran. The entire stadium was in an uproar. Everyone, including Boundless Sea and Qi Ming Yuan, who didn't know what was going on, was dumbfounded. Not only did they not fight back in this kind of group arena, they turned tail and ran. This was the first time in the history of the Southern Continent's Escort Agency Association. The only consolation was that the 5 people from the Heavens Equal Escort Agency still had some sense of shame. At the very least, they didn't run off the stage. Instead, they ran for their lives. If they had jumped off the stage, they would have been eliminated and the match would have ended there and then. Even so, the audience was still dumbfounded by the chaotic situation on the stage. The 5 Heavens Equal Escort Agency were being chased by the Noon Horse Escort Agency all over the stage. All of them had their hands over their heads and were running away like rats. They didn't have the slightest bit of resistance. Chapter 4453. Initially, he was still a little worried. Although they had suffered heavy losses in the first round, they had still lost. Now, his worries had been thrown to the back of his mind. Morale was the most important factor in an arena deathmatch. Without morale, no matter how strong one was, they would not be able to unleash their full potential. How could the Heavens Equal Escort Agency have any morale left? If they were not afraid of being punished by the agency, the 5 participating escorts would have already raised their hands and surrendered. As Wu Tsonglong laughed, the 5-horse escorts seemed to have received a boost in morale. Every move they made became more violent and ferocious. The Heavens Equal Escort Agency, who was being chased around the arena, was like a small boat in the middle of a huge wave, in danger of being capsized at any time. Everyone who saw this could not help but break out in cold sweat for them. This round is already a sure win. We won't even need half an incense stick's time to decide the winner, Wu Tsonglong said confidently. He turned to his assistant and instructed, quickly prepare the list of challengers and wait for the judges. Once they're done here, submit the challenge request. Head Escort Agency, who are we going to challenge next? The assistant asked. Idiot. Of course we're going to challenge the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. Wu Tsonglong glared at him and said with a greedy expression, he's obviously a pushover. He can easily earn points and make a name for himself. I'm sure many escort agencies will be fighting to challenge him later. We can't let others take advantage of him. Yes. The assistant finally understood and quickly went to prepare the list. Challenging the Heavens Equal Escort Agency was a wise move. We've gained both fame and fortune. If this continues, we can look forward to becoming one of the top 5 escort agencies. Wu Tsonglong said proudly. The situation was going so smoothly that even he could not believe it. Becoming one of the top 5 escort agencies had been his long-cherished wish for many years. Who would have thought that the equal of Heaven Escort Agency would be such a perfect stepping stone, delivering itself right to his doorstep? Wu Tsonglong was eagerly anticipating the outcome of the battle so that he could take advantage of the situation to reap some benefits. However, half an instant stick's time had passed. Although the arena was still in chaos, not a single one of the 5 Heavens Equal Escort Agency had fallen. Not only that, the 5 of them were not injured at all. As the head of the Horse Escort Agency, even though Wu Tsonglong was bent on using the equal of Heaven Escort Agency as a stepping stone, his observational skills were not something an ordinary person could compare to. He could already sense that there was something fishy going on. Even though Zhang Xian couldn't tell what the other party was up to, he was certain that the 5 Heavens Equal Escort Masters weren't as cowardly as they thought they were. They were being incited by someone else. Don't waste time. Focus on killing one first, Wu Tsonglong suddenly ordered. Yes, Escort Wu Ma on the stage was already feeling a little impatient. Hearing this, they immediately formed an encirclement formation. It was not a brilliant formation, but under the restrictions of the arena, it was enough to easily trap the opponent in a corner. Of course, the prerequisite for doing so was to temporarily let go of the other four. No matter what, he had to get rid of one first. This way, even if the time for an incense stick to burn was up, he would still be able to get rid of it. It was also the Noon Horse Escort Agency's victory. At least there wouldn't be any accidents. 5 against 1. And the one trapped was the weakest late golden elixir stage expert of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. The drowsy audience immediately became excited. Based on the Noon Horse Escort Agency's usual style, no one would be able to save this pitiful worm. A smug expression returned to Wu Songlong's face. He didn't know what the Heavens Equal Escort Agency was up to, but in the face of absolute power, all schemes and plots were just a joke. Unfortunately, Wu Songlong had forgotten one thing. In terms of the true strength of both parties on the battlefield, the Wu Horse Escort Agency did not have any advantage at all. It was just that the Heavens Equal Escort Agency's pathetic retreat had given him this subconscious misconception. There was no need for Lin Yi's order, and the other 4 Heavens Equal Escorts who had been emptied on the stage immediately changed from their previous cowardice to attacking together without hesitation. The speed of the change was shocking, and their target was the strongest golden core perfected master from the Horse Escort Agency. In the blink of an eye, it was still a farce. In the blink of an eye, the situation on the arena had become extremely tense. The audience watched with their eyes wide open, afraid to miss out on a good show. It was originally 5 against 1, but in the blink of an eye, it had become 4 against 1. This was because the Noon Horse Escort Agency, who had been targeted, would definitely not be able to fend for himself. It looked like they were about to exchange pieces. However, the difference was that once the pieces were exchanged, the Heavens Equal Escort Agency would lose their weakest late golden elixir stage expert, while the Noon Horse Escort Agency would lose their strongest golden elixir stage expert. No matter how one looked at it, it was a huge loss. Do you think we'll be afraid just because of this? What a joke. Eat the meat in your mouth first. Wu Songlong was not flustered or afraid. Others might be afraid of this situation, but the Noon Horse Escort Agency was not. Based on their usual style, they would definitely withstand the pressure and kill the late golden elixir stage expert first. Then, they would turn around and attack. The weakest late golden elixir stage expert would not be able to withstand the combined attack of everyone. However, the strongest golden elixir stage expert would have at least a 50% chance of surviving. Even if they were heavily injured, they would still have the upper hand in a 5 against 4 situation. A 50% chance of surviving was a risk that most people would not dare to take. However, these escorts who had been brainwashed by Wu Songlong were definitely an exception. After all, they were people who had been trained to die on the spot. Unexpectedly, after hearing Wu Songlong's words, the corner of Lin Yi's mouth curled up slightly. Is that so? How pathetic and ignorant. Wu Songlong wanted to retort. However, before he could say more than a few words, the 5 Noon Horse Escort Agency members on the arena suddenly retreated in unison. They actually temporarily let go of the Heavens Equal Escort who was trapped in the corner. Instead, they turned around and faced the 4 people behind them with a guarded expression. Are you all crazy? Why are you retreating now? You dare to disobey the orders of your chief escort agency? Wu Songlong was instantly enraged. Even the spectators outside the arena were in an uproar. Disobeying orders was something that would never happen in the Noon Horse Escort Agency. However, the scene before them was clearly slapping Wu Songlong in the face. How could they explain it? Hearing Wu Songlong's roar, the 5 Noon Horse Escort Agency members on the arena, especially the Golden Elixir stage expert, could not help but shrink their necks in fear. Originally, he had wanted to withstand the pressure and take the opportunity to kill the late Golden Elixir stage expert. It was not only him. Every single Noon Horse Escort Agency member had the same thought. Chapter 4454. But just now, for some reason, his body had inexplicably made an evasive movement. Even he himself did not know why. Looks like this tactic worked. Lin Yi smiled faintly and nodded in satisfaction. Brother Ling, what tactic is this? How dare they disobey Wu Long's orders? Isn't this too strange? Qi Wenhan asked in disbelief. Just now, when arranging the tactic, in order to prevent it from being leaked, Lin Yi only gave instructions to the 5 participating escorts. Everyone else, including Qi Wenhan, was kept in the dark. Not only Qi Wenhan, but everyone present who knew a thing or two actually had this doubt. The Noon Horse Escort Agency was famous for its strict obedience. Under the circumstances where the strength of the escorts was not outstanding, it was also because of this that they were able to gain a foothold in the Southlands. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was their lifeline, but now they don't really dare to openly disobey orders. It's just like how Wu Long insisted on brainwashing them. From just now, we have also been brainwashing them. It's that simple. Lin Yi smiled. Brainwashing? Qi Wenhan's expression instantly became even more strange. How is that possible? Brother Ling, you didn't say anything to brainwash them? Brainwashing doesn't necessarily require words. Actions are enough. From the beginning until now, all the actions of the 5 escorts have been instilling a hint into the other party, making them subconsciously firm in their thoughts. Lin Yi said, What thoughts? Qi Wenhan scratched his head. Brother Qi, if it were you, and you encountered a group of opponents who covered their heads and fled as soon as they appeared, asking you to exchange lives with them one-on-one, do you know how to do it? Lin Yi asked instead of answering. Of course not. Knowing that the other party is not as good as you, who would be stupid enough to exchange lives with them one-on-one? Qi Wenhan replied instinctively. Then he reacted and slapped his thigh. Wonderful. How wonderful. Brother Ling, you are indeed brilliant. Not really brilliant. I saw that the other party's morale was high from the start, and it was not a good idea to fight them head-on. So, I simply decided to show weakness. As for this, it's actually an unexpected gain. Lin Yi said with a smile. In one spurt of energy. This was the experience left behind by the ancient people. It was used to deal with the Wuma Escort Agency, this kind of armed escort team that was on steroids. It just so happened to have a miraculous restraining effect, and the psychological suggestion left behind in the process made the horse escort master waver. Even Lin Yi himself did not expect that it would have such a good anti-brainwashing effect. Brother Ling, you don't have to be so humble. You must have calculated this point, which is why you made our brothers flee so pathetically. This afternoon, Song Long is going to have a headache. Strict compliance is the foundation of their escort agency's survival. Now that his subordinates are disobedient, let's see what else he can do to be arrogant. Qi Wenhan immediately felt proud and elated. They might not necessarily be disobedient. It's just that he doesn't seem to be very obedient. Lin Yi corrected. It was impossible for the Wu Steed escort to completely disobey Wu Songlong's orders with this kind of strategy. Same. Qi Wenhan chuckled, then said impatiently, Then what do we do next? Do we have to go all out in one go? No, it's not the right time yet. Lin Yi shook his head lightly. Now, it seemed that his side had a slight psychological advantage, but it was far from enough. After all, the Wu Horse Escort Agency was not so easy to deal with. If they were to apply pressure now, it was very likely that they would retaliate and cause the opposite effect. All right. Although Qi Wenhan's heart was itching, since he had given Lin Yi full authority, he naturally would not say anything. Whatever Lin Yi said, he would do. Bastards. A bunch of bastards. Did my words go in one ear and out the other? Do you want to go back and receive punishment? Hurry up and kill one of them. Wu Long was still in a rage. When the 5 Wu Horse Escort Agency heard the words punishment, they instantly shivered and did not dare to be the slightest bit negligent. They hurriedly shook off the distracting thoughts in their minds and began to exert their strength again. They surrounded one of the Heaven's equal escorts in a corner. It was still that Golden Dan late-stage escort. At the same time, the 4 Heaven's equal escorts who had been emptied all turned their attention to the strongest Golden Dan late-stage escort. The situation was exactly the same as before. Kill him! Kill him! Wu Long was afraid that there would be another mishap, so he yelled and urged. While he was urging them, The other four Heaven's Equal escort masters had already prepared their powerful martial techniques. The arrow was already knocked on the bowstring, and at this critical moment, the group of Wu Horse escort masters, especially the Golden Core Paragon escort master, hesitated for a moment. However, under the threat of Wu Long, they had no choice but to act. "You can come down now," Lin Yi suddenly ordered. Then, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, when the Wu Horse escort agency launched their attacks, the trapped Heaven's Equal escorts actually jumped down from the arena at the last moment, causing all their attacks to miss. At the same time, it was the Golden Dam late-stage escort from the Wu Horse escort agency who received the full force of the other four Heaven's Equal escorts' attacks. While he was hesitating, all of his vital points were hit, and he died on the spot. In the blink of an eye, the entire crowd fell silent. Wu Long's face became extremely ugly, as black as the bottom of a pot. Because the Heaven's Equal escorts jumped down from the arena, they lost a late-stage Golden Dan late-stage escort. On the other hand, the Wu Horse escort agency lost a Golden Dan late-stage escort. It was a classic strategy, but everyone could see that the Wu Horse escort agency had suffered a great loss this time. After a long period of attrition, the morale of the middle horse escort on the field had already been worn down. Otherwise, if their morale was still high, they would not have wavered just now, nor would they have hesitated and delayed things. Now, they had suffered such a great loss, especially when they were toyed with by their opponents. Their morale had fallen to rock bottom, and they were at a loss for what to do. Feign weakness to the enemy, then retreat when the enemy advances. Wear down the morale and defeat the enemy with one strike. Brother Ling, you are a master of the art of war. Qi Wenhan's eyes lit up. He was a knowledgeable person, which was why he could see the situation so clearly. If it had been anyone else, they would have thought it was amazing. They would have thought that the Heaven's Equal escorts were obviously in a sorry state. So how did they suddenly gain the upper hand? Could it be that young Hero Ling's strategy from the very beginning was to use this strategy? Steward Song, who had been silent all this time, finally spoke up. That's right. Against a tough opponent like the Wu Horse escort agency, using brute force would be too damaging. Using this kind of strategy, which is extremely advantageous, can break their morale. Linny nodded and said. Chapter 4455. If not for the previous incident, they would have done so already. However, now that it had happened, the four-horse escort masters left on the field suffered an even greater blow. However, after saying that, his thoughts drifted to the faraway North Africa. At that time, fighting in the jungle required the most tactics, and the tactics that Lin Yi used were just some of the tactics that he had used too many times. It was just that no one used them on Heaven Tier Island. Top novel. When he thought of North Africa, he could not help but think of Yuning. Was she doing well in the secular world? Was everyone else doing well? Has he received my letter? Shaking his head, he threw away these sorrowful thoughts, because the competition was still ongoing. To be able to receive the help of young Hero Ling is the greatest fortune that the Equal of Heaven's escort agency has accumulated over several lifetimes. It is also the fortune of the young master's family. Steward Song sighed as he glanced at Qi Wenhan meaningfully. Qi Wenhan embarrassedly scratched his head. In comparison, the performance of his young master was far too immature. It couldn't be said that he was weak, but it could be said that Ling Yi was a freak. He was strong in all aspects, and ordinary people couldn't compare to him. What are you panicking for? You still have 4 people, and the opponent only has 4 people. What is there to panic about? Let's take them down in one go. Wu Long was unwilling to accept his fate, and continued to shout from below the stage. He was still trying to raise the morale of his team, and was still thinking of turning the tables. However, in the eyes of the audience, this scene only caused them to mock him. Anyone with eyes could see that the horse escort company had already lost. At this time, it was useless to be so stubborn. 4 against 4 is not bad, but the other side has 1 Jinan peak, 2 peak stage Jindan realm martial artists, and 1 peak stage Jinan Rel martial artist, while your Noon Horse Escort Agency has 1 peak stage Jinan Rel martial artist and 3 peak stage Jinan Rel martial artists. If their morale was as high as before, then they might be able to create a miracle. However, the problem was that their morale had fallen to the freezing point. What could they use to fight against the opponent? The development of this competition was not surprising. Just as everyone had expected, the Noon Horse Escort Agency had lost all of its sharpness. It was completely suppressed by the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. Even after the time it took to burn a stick of incense, the 4 escorts of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency were still unscathed. On the other hand, the menacing Noon Horse Escort Agency had lost another 2 escorts. In the end, they had to pay a heavy price of 3 lives. This was the end of the challenge. Without losing a single soldier, the Heavens Equal Escort Agency managed to have the last laugh despite the farce that started the operation. This scene caused everyone's eyes to pop out of their sockets, and they could not help but comment on it. Even a traditional wealthy organization like the 4 Seas Escort Agency might not be able to completely destroy the Noon Horse Escort Agency, which was known for its toughness and blood. At the very least, it was impossible for them to do so without losing a single soldier. However, the Heavens Equal Escort Agency had done it. This was a duel. Rather than saying it was a difference in strength, it was better to say it was a complete and utter suppression of intelligence. From the beginning to the end, Wu Tsonglong had been toyed with by Lin Yi. He did not have the slightest ability to resist. However, because of this, the Heavens Equal Escort Agency was even more favored by the Chambers of Commerce. Not only did the people in charge of the Chambers of Commerce not look down on the Heavens Equal Escort for running away, they all nodded their heads in approval. After all, the responsibility of an escort was to be a bodyguard. It was not to fight with brute force. No matter what methods were used, as long as one managed to protect the goods, they would be considered a good escort. On the other hand, if one fought with brute force and lost the goods, what was the point of that? To put it nicely, it was bravery, but in reality, it was like a tiger. It was not a life or death grudge. An escort's job was to be a bodyguard. Everything else was secondary. On the scoreboard, the Heavens Equal Escort Agency had risen by 100 points, reaching an astonishing 770 points. Not only had the gap not shrunk, but it had also widened. On the other hand, the Noon Horse Escort Agency, which had initiated the challenge, was left with a pitiful 60 points after losing 100 points. Not only was it at the bottom of all the escort agencies, but it was also facing the awkward situation of being eliminated if it lost another match. Wu Tsonglong's mood was so gloomy that he could die. He had been feared by all the escort agencies, but now he was about to follow in the footsteps of the 10,000 Miles Escort Agency. However, he had brought this upon himself. Who asked him to challenge the Heavens Equal Escort Agency? Head Escort Agency, are we still going to challenge the Heavens Equal Escort Agency? The assistant who had been ordered to make preparations asked cautiously. Slap! Wu Tsonglong slapped the assistant so hard that he fell to the ground. He shouted hysterically, "Challenge my ass! Don't tell me that we haven't lost badly enough. Do you really want to be eliminated?" Although he had flown into a rage out of humiliation, Wu Tsonglong did not lose his rationality. Right now, the most important thing for him was to ensure that he would not be eliminated, not to chase after the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. Otherwise, if they lost another match and were really eliminated, his Noon Horse Escort Agency would become as weak as the 10,000 Miles Escort Agency. They would no longer be able to receive any decent large orders. From then on, they would have to rely on the sea breeze to pass their days. The previous example was right in front of them. For a moment, the escort agencies that had been itching to give it a try and had the same idea as the Noon Horse Escort Agency. For example, the Yongxing Escort Agency, which was about as strong as the Noon Horse Escort Agency, had originally wanted to use the Heavens Equal Escort Agency as a stepping stone to reach the top in one step. However, they were now hesitating again. It was true that the Heavens Equal Escort Agency had not displayed its truly overwhelming strength in this match. It was far from enough to make people feel fear and despair. However, if it was any other escort agency that had taken the challenge, they could not guarantee that they would perform better than the Noon Horse Escort Agency. What if they ended up in the same situation? Lin smiled faintly when he saw that the people in charge of the escort agencies had fallen into a state of hesitation and struggle. This effect was actually just right. He could easily obtain points without scaring the other agencies and completely cut off their thoughts of reaching the top in one step. Otherwise, if they would be so frightened that no agency dared to take the initiative to challenge them, it would be a different kind of loss. After all, in the 5th round of the Escort Agency Championship, each agency was only given the right to challenge and the right to be challenged twice. As for whether they wanted to challenge or use up all these opportunities, it was up to each agency to decide. There were no mandatory rules in the championship. For example, the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency had the right to initiate a challenge twice. Of course, it was up to them to decide. However, whether or not they could use the remaining right to be challenged depended on whether or not the other escort agencies would continue to challenge them. If they were all scared off, then the right to be challenged this time would just be for show. Naturally, it would be useless. This problem was not so obvious for the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. After all, it was just a new force to be reckoned with. Its strength had yet to be truly ingrained in people's hearts. Chapter 4456. However, for traditional aristocrats like the Four Seas Escort Agency and the Divine Wind Escort Agency, their accumulated prestige was an obvious disadvantage at this time. They were more likely to fight among themselves. As for the other escort agencies, they did not dare to challenge them at all. Otherwise, they would be asking for trouble and giving away points for no reason. The entire conference fell into a rare silence. After the time it took for half an incense stick to burn, an escort agency stepped forward to challenge again. However, the challenger was not the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, but the weakest agencies that were ranked at the bottom in terms of strength and ranking. The ready-made points that were guaranteed to win were what most escort agencies love the most. The 5 consecutive matches were all competitions that were aimed at grabbing points while they were down. There was no suspense to speak of. Compared to the match between the Heavens Equal Escort Agency and the Noon Horse Escort Agency, it was really boring. The atmosphere in the entire Demon Cold Square was quite dull. Everyone was even beginning to feel sleepy. At this time, another good show finally came on stage. The Black Eagle Agency, which was ranked 6th on the scoreboard, challenged the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. Upon hearing these two names, everyone's spirits rose. These two organizations were no ordinary organizations. The Heavens Equal Escort Agency, which was currently in the limelight, did not need to be mentioned. However, the Black Eagle Escort Agency was no ordinary organization either. The Black Eagle Agency? Landy did not know much about this escort agency. He was surprised by this challenge. He thought that the Four Seas Escort Agency would not be able to hold back. After all, if it wanted to quickly gain points, directly challenging the Heavens Equal Escort Agency was the most cost-effective choice. As long as it won, it would be able to gain 200 points in one go. Otherwise, even if it won 4 matches in a row, it might not be able to gain so many points unless the Heavens Equal Escort Agency suffered consecutive defeats. Unfortunately, the probability of this happening was not high. This is troublesome. Chi Wen-han, who was standing at the side, frowned. Seeing that Lin, he was still confused. He smiled bitterly and explained, "The strength of this escort agency is far beyond the Noon Horse Escort Agency. Its strength is definitely not to be underestimated. Brotherling, do you know about the Yuantong Escort Agency?" "I've heard a little about it. It's said that the original 5 major escort agencies split up during the last South Continent Escort Agency Festival. That's why their position fell to our agency." Lenny nodded. He had heard about this from other escorts. This Black Hawk Escort Agency is actually the reorganized Far Pass Escort Agency. I heard that they've been recruiting for the past few years, and their strength is even stronger than the original Far Pass escort agency. And this time, they even publicly shouted out a slogan, saying that they want to take back their position as one of the 5 major escort agencies from our hands. Chi Wen-han couldn't help but feel a little nervous. If it was the afternoon darts, even if they had to pay a heavy price, they would still be able to defeat their opponents. However, this Black Eagle escort agency that came with such a menacing aura, if they were to really fight, their strength would probably be above their own. This was definitely a strong enemy. Hee. If that's the case, you've come with ill intentions. It was only then that Lin Yi understood. It made sense for the Black Eagle escort agency to challenge his Heaven's Equal escort agency. They wanted to take back their position as one of the top 5 escort agencies. Naturally, he would target the 5 major escort agencies. Compared to the other 4 traditional wealthy families, the Heaven's Equal escort agency was still in the limelight, but it was much weaker. Moreover, it was once the Yuantong escort agency. It had been snatched away by the Equal of Heaven escort agency. Therefore, this was a typical revenge. Brother Ling, what should we do now? Chi Wen-han saw that Lin, he didn't seem to care. He could not help but ask nervously. What else can we do? I'll fight with all my strength. I'll have to fight this kind of tough battle sooner or later. It's not a bad thing. If we do well in this battle, our Equals Heaven's escort agency's spirit, Chi, and spirit will rise by leaps and bounds. That is the aura that a wealthy and powerful family should have. Lin Yi glanced at him before ordering the escorts to line up and prepare for the selection of soldiers. Brother Ling is right. I lost my composure. Only then did Chi Wen-han react. As the young master, being afraid before the battle had even begun would greatly affect the morale of his men. While he was secretly embarrassed, he hurriedly patted his chest and said, Brother Ling, this is going to be a tough battle. I'm afraid it will be difficult to use tricks like before. Why don't I personally take the lead? An arena battle of life and death was ultimately a battle of brute strength. Not every battle could be like the one against the Noon Horse escort agency, where one could rely on intelligence to crush the opponent. Brother Chi, are you sure? This time, Lin Yi did not directly stop him. In his opinion, the upcoming battle against the Black Eagle escort agency might very well be a battle that would transform the Heaven's Equal escort agency. As the young master, if Chi Wen-han were to personally take the field, not only would he be powerful, but he would also be able to greatly boost the morale of his men, greatly increasing their chances of winning. Of course. Chi Wen-han nodded solemnly and grinned. Brother Ling, I'll leave the command to you. As for the vanguard, just leave it to me. Considering the upcoming challenge of the head of the escort agency, they had to conserve their strength. Therefore, Chi Wen-han would definitely not let Lin Yi join them. Therefore, this time, he would be leading the team himself. This was already the strongest formation that the Heaven's Equal escort agency could muster. That's good. This battle concerns the future of the entire escort agency. Since Brother Chi is personally taking the field, this battle must be won. Also, Brother Chi, you must take care of your own safety. If anything happens to you, even if we win this battle in the end, it will not be worth it. Lin Yi reminded him. Brother Ling, do not worry. I know what I'm doing. Chi Wen-han nodded solemnly. Good. Lin Yi immediately began to select his team members. This battle was of utmost importance. There was no room for mistakes. Therefore, he did not have any thoughts of conserving his strength. He immediately brought out the strongest formation he had, including Chi Wen-han, who was at the Golden Essence level. There were a total of 3 Golden Essence level experts at the Golden Essence level and 2 experts at the peak of the late Golden Essence level. Of course, if they wanted to ensure that their strength was the strongest on paper, they could actually add another Golden Essence level expert. However, this person had dared to fight the Noon Horse escort agency. Although he was not injured, he had expended a lot of true chi. He would not be able to recover in a short period of time. Therefore, there was no point in forcing him to fight now. With such a strong formation, even if they were to face a prestigious escort agency like the Four Seas escort agency, they would still be able to put up a fight. If they were to face the Noon Horse Escort Agency, this formation would be able to crush them directly. There was no need for them to scheme. Seeing the list of participating escorts that Steward Song had handed over, Chi Mingyuan, who was sitting among the judges, was instantly stunned. Nonsense! Chi Mingyuan glared and immediately slammed the table, wanting to step off the stage to stop this. Although in order to ensure the fairness of the competition, as a judge, he was not allowed to step off the stage without permission, he could not care less now. After all, this was his only son, who he had high hopes for. Chapter 4457. If he lost the competition, he could still make a comeback. But if something happened to Chi Wen-han, who would he cry to? He was the only successor of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. If even the successor died, what future would the agency have? Head Escort Agency, we can't always protect our young eagle under our wings. There will come a day when it will experience a storm. I think we should let Wen-han have a try. This is a rare opportunity. Housekeeper Song reached out to stop him. Old Song, why are you? Chi Mingyuan frowned and sighed. I understand this, but this kind of thing has to be done step by step. We can't put ourselves in such a dangerous situation all of a sudden, right? The Black Eagle Agency is not easy to deal with. Chief Escort, in my opinion, while this battle is dangerous, nothing will happen to Wen-han. After all, young Hero Ling is here, and you've also seen his ability to command on the spot. There won't be any problems. Butler Song, on the other hand, looked very confident. This is true. Chi Mingyuan hesitated. Lin Yi's presence gave him a reassurance. Even if he did not participate in the battle himself, just commanding on the spot should be enough to ensure Chi Wen-han's safety. In the end, he could only nod and say, the world still belongs to the young. Old Song, we are all old, that's right. Our Heavens Equal Escort Agency is about to enter a new chapter. We have a bright future. Housekeeper Song nodded. Well said. A bright future. Chi Mingyuan's eyes flashed. He finally made up his mind and announced the name list of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency's participating escorts. Seeing that the first name on the list was the young master of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, Chi Wen-han, the crowd was in an uproar. After all the previous miraculous performances, especially when they defeated the aggressive Noon Horse Escort Agency without losing a single soldier, no one dared to look down on the Heavens Equal Escort Agency anymore. After all, they were not idiots. Even if the Heavens Equal Escort Agency did not display overwhelming strength, they had a solid record in front of them. They had no choice but to accept it. Now that they saw Chi Wen-han personally leading the team, the crowd did not look down on them as much as Lin Yi had expected. Instead, they were all in high spirits. Facing a strong opponent like the Black Eagle Agency, the Heavens Equal Escort Agency was finally going all out. Chi went on. At this moment, in the Black Hawk Escort Agency's camp, there was a middle-aged man in a black coat with an eye-catching knife scar on his face. Seeing this, he could not help but be slightly taken aback. This person was the chief escort of the Black Hawk Escort Agency, Zhao Shannying. 5 years ago, the Yuantong Escort Agency fell apart overnight. In just a year, Zhao Shannying, who was originally just an ordinary escort leader of the Yuantong Escort Agency, took advantage of the chaos and rose to power. Not only did he successfully swallow up the various forces left behind by the Yuantong Escort Agency, but he also reformed the Black Eagle Escort Agency. After 3 years of development and expansion, his current strength was far greater than before. He was a formidable and ambitious character. Even the young master has been forced to come out. This shows that the equal of Heaven Escort Agency's strength is only SOSO. Although they were lucky enough to become one of the top 5 escort agencies last time, it's a pity that a nouveau riche will always be a nouveau riche. They'll never be able to make a name for themselves, one of the escorts beside him said with a pout. The Heavens Equal Escort Agency has been one of the top 5 escort agencies for 5 years. In your eyes, it's just a nouveau riche. Then what is our Black Eagle Escort Agency? Zhao Shanning glanced at him. The escort leader was at a loss for words. Although his agency had been reformed from the Yuantong Escort Agency, strictly speaking, it was still an escort agency that had only been established for a few years. If he insisted on feeling superior to the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, he would be deceiving himself and others. The biggest difference between a rich and a nouveau riche is not in strength, but in the foundation and temperament. This Heaven's Equal Escort Agency has only been established for a short 5 years, but it already has the temperament of a rich and powerful family. They're able to take things in at will, strategize against their enemies, and fight to the death. They're really not simple, Zhao Shanning exclaimed. For the past few years, he had been wholeheartedly trying to build the temperament of a rich and powerful family. Perhaps in the eyes of others, the Black Eagle Escort Agency was strong enough, but in his eyes, it was far from enough. Especially now that he had seen the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, the gap between them was even more obvious. Head Escort, since the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency is stronger than expected, should we proceed with the battle as planned? The escort leader who was in charge of directing the battle asked. No, this time I will personally direct the battle. If our Black Eagle Escort Agency wants to rise, we must defeat the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. We must win this battle, not lose. Zhao Shanning's aura grew cold. The current Heaven's Equal Escort Agency had indeed earned his respect. However, respect was respect, and he could not go easy on them. In fact, the more this was so, the more he wanted to defeat them. An opponent like this deserved to be personally commanded by Zhao Shanning. While Zhao Shanning was observing the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, Lin Yi, Qi Wenhan, and the others were also carefully observing the Black Eagle Escort Agency. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. That person is the head escort of the Black Eagle Escort Agency. Lin Yi looked Zhao Shanning up and down. Whether it was against the Noon Horse Escort Agency or the Yongxing Escort Agency in the first round of the battle, he had only observed the participating escorts. He had never paid attention to the person commanding the battle. This time, however, was an exception. That's right. This person's name is Zhao Shanning. My father has a very high opinion of him, even higher than boundless seas. He is an ambitious and ruthless character, Qi Wenhan said, nodding cautiously. He does seem to be something else. Lenny nodded. After experiencing so many ups and downs, he had seen all sorts of people. He had quite a bit of experience when it came to reading people's faces. As the saying went, one's face was born from one's heart. This was not just a person's appearance, but also a person's temperament and demeanor. This Zhao Shanning, on the other hand, gave off an extraordinary aura. He was a classic example of an ambitious and ruthless character. As the two of them spoke, the participating escorts of the Dark Eagle Escort Agency, under the urging of the referee, had already left the arena. The 5 of them lined up in a row and stood on the arena, causing the entire audience to exclaim in surprise. The 5 participating escorts were all experts at the Golden Core Perfection stage. How generous! Even Qi Wenhan could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. The rules stated that only Golden Core experts could participate in the South Continent's Escort Agency Grand Meet. Sending 5 Golden Core experts at the Golden Core Perfection stage at once was already a dream lineup. In the past, only the overlords of escort agencies like the Four Seas Escort Agency could deploy such a lineup. Who would have thought that the Black Eagle Escort Agency would be so powerful? Chapter 4458. Interesting. Lin Yi's eyes brightened. Although he was only in charge of giving instructions and not personally going into battle, the thrill of encountering such a strong opponent made him unconsciously excited. Brother Ling, how do we fight? Qi Wenhan asked. The other 4 participating escorts also looked at Lin Yi expectantly. They were more or less nervous. After all, they were facing 5 Golden Core consummation experts. If they fought them head-on, they would definitely be at a disadvantage. Therefore, The key to winning this battle was still Lin Yi's on-the-spot instructions. Everyone, don't be nervous. In this battle, our strength is actually not weaker than our opponents. Lin Yi smiled and comforted them. He then analyzed, although our opponents have 5 golden core consummation experts, we have Brother Qi on our side, so there is nothing to be afraid of. Brother Qi's strength is well known throughout the entire Verdant Arc territorial waters. Ordinary golden core consummation experts are probably just SOSO in Brother Qi's eyes. Brother Ling is too kind. Qi Wenhan pinched his nose and did not deny it. Although his strength was not as abnormal as Lin Yi's, who could beat up an early Yuanying expert, he was still an existence that could not be underestimated. He was known as the small, invincible golden core in the Verdant Arc territorial waters. Yes, with young master here, we can fight. The other 4 participating escorts immediately relaxed quite a bit. Under normal circumstances, Qi Wenhan would be able to restrain 2 golden core paragon experts. In this way, when they fought later, their side would not necessarily be at a disadvantage. So there is no need to be nervous. Although our opponents are strong, as long as we treat them calmly, our chances of winning are still very high. Lin Yi smiled. After letting everyone relax, he said seriously, if nothing unexpected happens when a battle starts, I am afraid that the opponents will focus on attacking Brother Qi. Brother Qi, you must be mentally prepared for this. Yes, I know. To catch the bandits, first catch the ringleader. Qi Wenhan replied in a low voice. He was the strongest person in the equal of Heaven Escort Agency. At the same time, he was also the most obvious breakthrough point. If something happened to him, the young master, then everything would be over. Then we have to be careful and protect the young master carefully. This is to prevent our opponents from succeeding in their schemes. The 4 participating escorts looked at each other. Although Qi Wenhan was strong, this was an escort agency competition, not a one-on-one duel. The situation could change in an instant, and if his opponents seized the opportunity to gang up on him, even Qi Wenhan would not be able to withstand it. Unexpectedly, Lin Yi shook his head repeatedly. If you really think that way, then we have lost, and he will definitely lose. Everyone, including Qi Wenhan, was stunned. Just a moment ago, he had said that his chances of winning were very high. How did it become certain defeat in the blink of an eye? Brother Qi's presence is a double-edged sword for both sides. The longer he stays on the field, the easier it is for him to get into an accident. For the Black Eagle Escort Agency, the most they can do is to lose this match. They can afford to lose, but we can't. Lin Yi's gaze slowly swept across everyone's faces. So, in order to prevent any accidents, we must finish this battle quickly. And the battle quickly? Everyone's eyelids twitched as they hurriedly asked, how do you mean in the battle quickly? Their opponents were not weaklings, but 5 golden core perfected experts. With their strength, it would be a blessing from the heavens if they could win this battle of life and death. How could they end the battle quickly? Unless, of course, it was a risky move. You must remember every word I say. Whether or not we can have the last laugh in this battle, whether or not we can let you, especially Brother Qi, escape unscathed, depends on whether or not you can do it. Lin Yi's expression turned serious for once, because everyone was right. From a certain perspective, this strategy was indeed a risky one. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the battle between the Black Eagle Escort Agency and the Heavens Equal Escort Agency finally began with the announcement of the referee. The moment the incense was lit, the 5 golden core perfected experts of the Black Eagle Escort Agency charged towards their opponents like ferocious tigers released from their cages. They did not seem to have any intricate formation, but their pace was surprisingly consistent. Even their breathing was strictly synchronized. The result of this was that the 5 people's powerful auras completely fused into one, forming a momentum that could topple mountains and overturn seas, covering the sky and covering the earth as it pressed down on Qi Wenhan and the others. Not simple indeed. Lin Yi's eyes brightened. Synchronizing one's breath did not seem difficult, but in reality, It was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. It was even more difficult after one's strength had reached the golden core perfected level. Whether it was fighting or doing other things, everyone had their own familiar rhythm. The more powerful one was, the more obvious this rhythm would be. Once one broke away from their own rhythm, everything would become difficult. Originally, one's strength might be 10%, but in the end, they might only be able to use 60 to 70% or even less. In all kinds of competitions in the secular world, there were always people who brought their opponents into their own rhythm and won in the end. Cases of the weak defeating the strong were not uncommon. In fact, this was the principle. Under such circumstances, to make 5 golden core perfected experts synchronize one's breath, the difficulty was obvious. Lin Yi did not believe that his opponents would deliberately sacrifice part of their strength to achieve this. Since his opponents dared to do this, there was only one possibility. The rhythm of these 5 golden core perfected experts was naturally synchronized. At least, the difference between them was negligible. Fight! In the face of his opponent's mountain-like pressure, Qi Wenhan did not want to be outdone. After a cold shout, the 4 heavens equal escorts beside him quickly formed an arrow formation, the arrowheads pointing straight at their opponents. What a strong spirit! Zhao Shanning could not help but praise. The Heavens Equal Escort Agency was indeed one of the 5 major escort agencies. Although it had only been a short time, the quality of these escorts was not the least bit inferior to the other 5 agencies. In particular, the arrow formation spirit was threatening. It was obvious that they had trained a lot. However, what made Zhao Shanning slightly surprised was that among the 5 opponents, the strongest was undoubtedly Qi Wenhan. Logically speaking, he, the strongest person, should be the spearhead of the formation. Only by doing so would he be able to maximize the power of the arrow formation. However, the current situation was that not only was Qi Wenhan not the spearhead, he faintly felt that he was disconnected from the rest of the group. What was going on? Could it be that this young master did not usually train with the escorts, so he was not used to the arrow formation? This is a good opportunity. Cut them in half and separate them. The opportunity was fleeting. Zhao Shanning did not have much time to hesitate and immediately gave the order. Chapter 44-59. On the stage, the 5 black eagle escort masters roared angrily and exerted their strength. Instead of pressing forward, they changed their formation and moved in a straight line, instantly separating Qi Wenhan and the other 4. Bang! This time, Qi Wenhan was immediately isolated, completely drifting away from his own vanguard formation. The audience gasped in shock, not to mention those who knew the ropes. Even the layman who just wanted to watch the show knew that the Heavens Equal Escort Agency was in a bad situation. Qi Wenhan, the young master, was the soul of the agency. He had to protect him closely, but in the blink of an eye, he had been isolated. They were outnumbered, and the initiative had completely fallen into the hands of their opponents. This way, they could do whatever they wanted, and the other 4 from the Heavens Equal Escort Agency could not even save them. How could this be? Qi Mingyuan's heart tightened when he saw this scene. He took 2 steps back from the judge's seat. If Qi Wenhan really died on the stage, how could he live? Head escort, please wait. In my opinion, this matter is not so simple. Wenhan should not be so brainless. Furthermore, young hero Ling is giving commands on the spot. Housekeeper Song, who had been guarding the area, quickly stopped him. Old Song, what you mean is... Qi Mingyuan immediately stopped in his tracks. He was confused because of his concern, but now that Housekeeper Song had reminded him, he immediately understood. With Ling Yi and Qi Wenhan's abilities, even if they were not a match for the Black Eagle Escort Agency, they should not be in such a passive position. Let's continue watching. I believe they will not disappoint you. Housekeeper Song nodded and did not say anything else. I hope so. Qi Mingyuan felt a little more at ease, but he was still a little worried. What were young hero Ling and his son up to? Please don't let anything go wrong. At this moment, on the stage, the situation was clear. Qi Wenhan was separated by his opponents. If he wanted to form a coordination with the other four, he would have to go through the encirclement of the 5 Golden Elixir Realm experts. This was practically 1 against 5. Even if Qi Wenhan was much stronger than the average Golden Elixir Realm expert, it was impossible for him to do such an exaggerated thing. At most, he could fight 1 against 2, and it was uncertain whether he could win in the end. If it was 1 against 5, it was practically asking for death. Capture the ringleader. Zhao Shannying, who was below the stage, hurriedly gave the order. He had been thinking about how to deal with Qi Wenhan since the beginning. Now that such a great opportunity had been placed in front of him, there was no reason for him to hesitate. After all, he had no friendship with the equal of Heaven Escort Agency to begin with. Furthermore, this was not the time to be soft-hearted. While you're down, I'll take your life. The 5 experts of the peak of Gold Core Realm of the Black Eagle Escort Agency immediately formed a formation and prepared to take advantage of the situation to surround and kill Qi Wenhan. With their strength and this kind of ready-made opportunity, they did not need to waste their time at all. They only needed a moment to solve the problem. However, before they could do anything, on the other side, Qi Wenhan was already prepared. In an instant, he exploded with an extremely astonishing speed, retreating to the empty space behind him. At the same time, the other 4 Heavens Equal escorts, who had formed an arrow formation, were also stunned. Instead, he took the initiative and aggressively charged towards one of the Black Eagle bodyguards. Even Zhao Shannying jumped in fright. His heart skipped a beat. The 2 sides had reacted in unison. Moreover, it was so fast. How was it possible that he was caught off guard? It was obvious that he had been accumulating power for a long time. That meant they were prepared for this. Could it be that they did this on purpose from the beginning? Zhao Shannying subconsciously glanced at Lin Yi in the distance. He knew that the Heavens Equal Escort Agency's previous victories were all thanks to this person. In the previous round, it was also this person who was able to toy with the Noon Horse Escort Agency in the palm of his hand. Who knew what this person was planning this time? The reason why Zhao Shannying was able to achieve what he had today was not because he was arrogant and conceited. He was able to clearly weigh the weight of every person he had met. In his eyes, Lin Yi was undoubtedly an unfathomable person. Zhao Shannying didn't dare let his guard down in the slightest, afraid of falling into Lin Yi's trap. Fortunately, the 5 escorts he'd sent out were all cautious men. Even when they'd wanted to surround and kill Qi Wenhan, they hadn't messed up their formation. Otherwise, if they'd been ambushed by 4 Heavens Equal escorts, one of them would have died on the spot. Come on, the gamble has already begun. Let's see if you're prepared to bet on big or small. Lin Yi looked at Zhao Shannying from afar and smiled faintly. On one side was Qi Wenhan, who was alone, and on the other side were the 4 Heavens Equal escorts in the arrow formation. Zhao Shannying had to make a choice between the 2. This was the gamble that Lin Yi had set out. It was supposed to be a very simple matter, but because Qi Wenhan had escaped the encirclement, they had lost the opportunity to break through the situation. The situation had suddenly become complicated, and Zhao Shannying could not help but frown. First of all, the 4 Heavens Equal escorts who had formed the arrow formation could not be left unguarded. The arrow formation was originally a formation with outstanding lethality. With the strength of these 4 people, if they were left alone, it would not be difficult for them to kill an expert in the Golden Elixir Great Perfection in an instant. Secondly, on the other side, Qi Wenhan could not be left unguarded. Zhao Shannying could see that this person's strength was much stronger than an ordinary expert of Golden Core consummation. If he allowed him to do as he pleased, the consequences would be unimaginable. No matter how he thought about it, he couldn't let go of either side. Zhao Shannying could only choose to split his forces into 2. One would deal with the arrow formation, and the other would deal with Qi Wenhan. As for how many people he would split up, he had to carefully consider it. On Qi Wenhan's side, it was obviously impossible to send only one person. If it was a one-on-one fight, he might be killed in minutes. Therefore, he needed at least 2 people. On the other side, Facing the arrow formation of the four heavens equal escorts, Zhao Shannying did not dare to underestimate them. If there were less than 3 people, he might suffer a great loss. Vulture, Falcon, deal with Qi Wenhan. The other 3 hold off the other 4. Zhao Shannying ordered in a low voice. He was still eyeing the isolated Qi Wenhan like a tiger watching its prey. He was itching to make a move and swallow him up. However, at the same time, he was afraid of falling into Lin Yi's trap, so he did not dare to send more people to deal with Qi Wenhan. If the other party's killing move was hidden in the arrow formation of the 4, sending only 2 people to guard would not be sending a sheep to the tiger's mouth. 2 people to deal with Qi Wenhan, and 3 people to deal with the arrow formation. This was the safest method in Zhao Shannying's eyes. Chapter 4460. On the other side, Lin Yi smiled as he watched the scene unfold. Bet on big, bet on small, and leave after you've made up your mind. Everyone in the audience was filled with interest as they raised their heads to look at the situation in the arena. Currently, it was still unclear who had the upper hand and who had the lower hand, but the scene was clear. The huge arena had unknowingly been divided into 2 halves. On one side, it was Qi Wenhan against 2, and on the other side, it was the Vanguard formation against 4 against 3. After so many South Continent Escort Agency Grand Meetings, they had seen all kinds of escort agency duels, and they had seen all kinds of tragic battles. But this was the first time they had seen such a strange situation. Zhao Shannying suddenly clenched his fists. Although it was still a stalemate, and no matter how he looked at it, there was a strong sense of uneasiness in his heart, and chills ran down his spine. This feeling was like falling into a swamp. At first, it was not dangerous, but as it sank deeper and deeper, it would be too late to regret it when it was discovered. Zhao Shannying's heart suddenly skipped a beat, and he was about to change his strategy when the situation suddenly changed. Qi Wenhan was still fighting 1 against 2, but on the other side, both sides had 1 person seriously injured and rolled off the arena. The Heavens Equal Escort Agency sacrificed a peak golden elixir realm late stage, but succeeded in exchanging the opponent's golden elixir realm great attainment. This situation made everyone's eyelids twitch. Exchange, another exchange. Previously, they had gained the upper hand in the exchange of chess pieces, which had destroyed the last bit of the Horse Escort Agency's spirit and allowed them to crush their opponent and achieve a complete victory. Now, the Heavens Equal Escort Agency was playing the same trick again, but this time, their opponent was the Black Eagle Agency. That's great. Young Hero Ling is really amazing. In order to create this opportunity to exchange, you have really put in a lot of effort. Qi Mingyuan saw the situation and immediately felt relieved and praised Ling Xian. Previously, he was still confused, but now that things had developed to this point, if he still could not see Lin Yi's plan, then he would not be able to sit in this position today. Although the strategy of exchanging pieces was simple, to achieve this, especially at the same time of exchanging pieces, it required real skills. After all, people were not fools. No one would be stupid enough to exchange an expert in the great perfection of the Gold Core Realm for an expert in the peak of the Gold Core Realm late stage. Heaven's Equal Escort Agency was only able to do this because of Lin Yi's formation and direction. If it wasn't for the arrow formation, successfully creating a situation where they had the advantage of numbers meant that they wouldn't have the opportunity to exchange pieces. Naturally, they wouldn't be able to take advantage of the situation. Not bad. Not only did young Hero Ling set up a brilliant trap, but Wenhan's performance was also commendable. His contributions cannot go unnoticed. Butler Song nodded repeatedly. Although the breakthrough point of this exchange was the 4-man arrow formation, anyone with a discerning eye could see that the most crucial source of all this was Qi Wenhan. If he had not successfully held back the 2 Golden Core Paragon experts, how could the other 4 people of the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency have the advantage in numbers? Especially when Qi Wenhan was facing 2 Golden Core Paragon experts. He was able to remain calm from beginning to end. With ease and ease, people could not help but sigh. This young master of the Equal of Heaven escort agency was indeed not an ordinary person. He was able to easily take on two people at the same realm. At least, ordinary people would definitely not be able to do this. Let him go 1v2, even though it seems a bit risky. Although it seems risky, it's still within this fellow's ability. As long as the other party doesn't act recklessly, there shouldn't be any danger. Qi Mingyuan nodded. He was no longer worried and nervous. Instead, he became more spirited. If this continued, the possibility of taking down the Black Eagle Agency was at least 60%, maybe even higher. Once they succeeded, the Equal of Heaven escort agency will be the first to take down one of the top 5 escort agencies. This was enough to give the entire escort agency a shot of adrenaline. At the same time, it would let everyone know that the Equal of Heaven escort agency was not an undeserved reputation. It was not a super dark horse that had gotten lucky. It was truly capable of becoming the overlord of the escort agencies. Oh no! In contrast, Zhao Shanning's mood was extremely heavy. In the eyes of the onlookers, the Black Eagle Agency had suffered a loss this time. However, there were still 4 people left in the arena. The Equal of Heaven escort agency had 3 Golden Core Paragon experts and 1 Peak Late Golden Core expert. The Black Eagle Agency, on the other hand, had 4 Golden Core Paragon experts. In terms of strength, they still had the upper hand. Even though this advantage was not great, it was enough to tip the scales of victory in the Black Eagle Agency's favor. At the very least, they would not be at a disadvantage. However, Zhao Shanning was not as shallow as the onlookers. He was not looking at the gains and losses of one city or one place. Instead, he was looking at the overall direction of the situation. It was obvious that after this exchange, the situation was already on the Equal of Heaven escort agency's side. On Qi Wenhan's side, there were 2 Golden Core Paragon experts working together to besiege him. Even if they could not take him down in a short time, there was no need to worry too much. On the other hand, the Equal of Heaven escort agency's remaining 3 people could still form an arrow formation. On the other hand, the Black Eagle Agency's side only had 2 people left. The situation was not looking good. Previously, it was 3 against 4. Basically, they were not at a disadvantage. Now that it was 2 against 3, it was obvious that they could not handle it. What Zhao Shanning was really worried about was that the other party would use the same trick again and exchange a Peak Late Golden Core expert for a Golden Core Paragon expert. If that happened, they would completely lose the advantage. This was not impossible. In fact, it was highly possible. After all, the other party still had the advantage in numbers. Moreover, they held the initiative and were fully capable of launching another exchange. When that happened, all the people left in the arena would be Golden Core Paragon experts. Both sides would be fighting 1 against 2. However, although Qi Wenhan had the strength to fight 1 against 2, the Black Eagle Agency's side could not do the same. They might even be killed by the 2 opponents in an instant. What should I do? Zhao Shanning was extremely anxious. At the same time, he looked at Lin Yi in the distance with extreme fear. Both sides were giving commands on the spot. Zhao Shanning's side was taking 1 step at a time and looking 2 steps ahead. He was smarter than the average person. However, compared to this calm and composed young man, he was no different from a 3-year-old child. The other party was not just taking 1 step at a time and looking 2 steps ahead. Even before he made his move, he had already grasped everything in his hands. No, he had to quickly come up with a countermeasure. Zhao Shanning did not dare to wait passively. Otherwise, if the other party really attacked again, he would not even have the chance to fight back. Chapter 4461. This meant that he was prepared to attack the only remaining Peak Golden Elixir Realm expert of the Qitian Escort Agency. Vulture was an expert in speed. Both of them were Peak Golden Elixir Realm experts. Even if he could not defeat Qi Wenhan one-on-one, he should have no problem delaying Qi Wenhan for a short period of time. If Falcon turned around to help, it would become a 3-on-3. With a slight advantage in strength, it would not be difficult to take out the opponent's Peak Golden Elixir Realm expert first. Zhao Shanning did not want to take any risks. He only wanted to use his advantage and strength to crush his opponent directly. But now, it was obvious that he no longer had this confidence. Qi Wenhan was slightly taken aback when he sensed the other party's intentions. He immediately wanted to stop this Black Eagle escort who was known as Falcon, but the other party did not want to tangle with him at all. With Vulture's protection, unless Qi Wenhan risked his life to exchange wounds with him, there was nothing he could do to him. Qi Wenhan's eyes flashed with some hesitation and struggle. Based on his tough personality, if it were any other situation, he would definitely not let Falcon go so easily. However, this was an escort agency competition, and he was the most crucial factor in determining the outcome of the competition. Risking his life was fine at any other time, but this was the only time he could not do it. "Brother Qi, don't hold back." Lin, he suddenly shouted from below the stage. Qi Wenhan stared blankly for a moment, then immediately became spirited. Without caring about anything else, he leaped up and chased after Falcon. He raised his hand and used the most powerful absolute soul palm. This was his trump card. This sudden attack left everyone speechless. The crowd was left speechless. The Black Eagle escort on the stage, especially the Falcon guards, who could feel the murderous intent behind him. This is a good opportunity. Let's join forces and kill him. Zhao Shanning roared calmly, as if he had already expected this. It was his original intention to let Falcon help on the other side, but at the same time, there was another meaning to it, to lure the snake out of its hole. And now it seemed, this move had obviously succeeded. As soon as Zhao Shanning's voice fell, the two Black Eagle escorts closest to Qi Wenhan in the arena, Vulture and Falcon, attacked at the same time, each using their strongest martial skills to attack Qi Wenhan. Falcon, who had been locked onto by Qi Wenhan's absolute soul palm, was doing his utmost to carry out Zhao Shanning's orders. The outcome he faced was not only serious injuries, but it was very likely that he would die on the spot. However, he still chose to do so, which showed how much prestige Zhao Shanning had in their hearts. As expected, he was not a simple opponent. Lin Yi gave Zhao Shanning a look of appreciation. With his own strength, he had managed to take out two opponents at the peak of the Jindan stage. This was really tough. Wenhan, Qi Mingyuan immediately shouted and rushed down from the judge's stand. He looked at Qi Wenhan's face, which was as pale as paper, and he was on the verge of death. Qi Mingyuan's internal organs were on fire, and his eyes were about to bleed. Lin Yi, on the other hand, hadn't been idling around. He'd caught Qi Wenhan the moment he'd been knocked down from the arena, one hand on Qi Wenhan's back, his head lowered, not saying a word. To outsiders, Lin Yi seemed to be blaming himself and regretting Qi Wenhan's miserable fate. However, no one could have imagined that at this moment, Qi Wenhan was continuously flowing through Lin Yi's palm and into Qi Wenhan's body, rapidly healing his injuries. Healing injuries with Qi Wenhan had always been Lin Yi's forte. Now that his strength had advanced to the mid-stage of the Jindan stage, the effects of Qi Wenhan's Qi Wenhan were incomparable. In the past, Qi Wenhan's near-death injuries would have taken at least half a day to heal. Now, however, it didn't even take 10 minutes. "Wenhan, how are you?" Qi Mingyuan no longer cared about his identity as a judge. He parted the crowd and rushed over. However, when he reached Zhou Dongwang, he was immediately stunned. "Son, father, I'm fine." Qi Wenhan's face was calm as he stood up. Behind him, Lin Yi withdrew his hand without anyone noticing. Qi Mingyuan was speechless. He couldn't say anything for a long time. Just a moment ago, he was burning with anxiety. In the end, he was almost choked to death by his own son. Chapter 4462. Just now, he looked like he was on the verge of death. How could he look completely fine now? Even Qi Mingyuan was behaving like this. Needless to say, the rest of the people present had their mouths wide open. They looked at each other and stared at Qi Wenhan speechlessly. Especially Zhao Shanning of the Black Eagle Escort Agency. He looked like he had seen a ghost. Looking at his two golden core realm experts lying on the ground, it was unknown whether they were dead or alive. Then looking at Chi Wen-han, whom they had fought so hard to replace, there was no sign of injury at all. If this wasn't a ghost, then what was? Wen-han, are you really okay? Chi Mingyuan finally asked a proper question. He checked Chi Wen-han's injuries up and down with a face full of concern. The result shocked him. There was really no injury at all. Dad, don't worry. I'm really fine. Chi Wen-han stretched his arms and legs. He could move freely without any signs of injury. The audience was completely speechless. They looked at Chi Wen-han as if they were looking at a monster. Apart from shock, there was more shock. The strength of the Golden Core Realm experts of the Black Eagle Escort Agency was obvious to all. They were definitely not weak among those of the same level. However, Chi Wen-han had withstood the powerful killing moves of the two opponents. In particular, Vulture had taken the opportunity to scratch him twice. In the end, he had only rested for a while after being knocked out of the ring. On the other hand, it was unknown whether the two men from the Black Eagle Escort Agency were dead or alive. They were already exhaling more than they were inhaling. With such a stark contrast, anyone could see that even though they were all experts in the Golden Core Realm, they were still of the Golden Core Realm. Although they were all experts of the Golden Core Realm, the difference in strength was definitely not small. Some people even couldn't help but speculate that if this was not an arena battle, if it had been any other occasion, Chi Wen-han could have fought again in his current state. Who could stop him then? It seemed that the young master of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency was simply an invincible existence in the Golden Core Realm. Unbeknownst to everyone, Chi Wen-han, who was a legend in the audience, was also confused at this moment. However, he could guess that it was Lin Yi's trick, so he cooperated with him very tacitly. Chi Wen-han is actually so strong? Could it be that he was hiding his true strength in the past? Long Kiba looked at this scene. He couldn't help but frown deeply. Due to the conflict between the Dragon Boat Escort Agency and the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, he had dealt with Chi Wen-han many times. He had always known that Chi Wen-han was not weak, but he never knew that it could be this strong. That's right. This is a little troublesome. In the fifth round of the Escort Agency Championship, the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency accepted 2 challenges and won both of them. With a dazzling 870 points, they continued to lead the leaderboard, leaving the other 31 escort agencies far behind. Everyone in the Heavens Equal Escort Agency cheered and celebrated. They surrounded Chi Wen-han and Lin Yi, the 2 greatest contributors to their success. They cheered and jumped for joy, unable to contain their excitement. At that moment, the head escort of the Black Eagle Agency, Zhao Shanying, slowly walked to the front of the crowd under the watchful eyes of the audience. The crowd immediately quieted down and looked at Zhao Shanying cautiously. This person was able to single-handedly rebuild the Black Eagle Agency and was undoubtedly a formidable character. He had come here with a vengeance, but in the end, he was trampled to the ground by his own Heavens Equal Escort Agency. Faced with such a cruel blow, who knew what he would do next? You're Lin Yi. Zhao Shanying walked up to Lin Yi and looked him up and down. That's right. What advice do you have for me? Lin Yi's expression was calm as he looked him up and down. You flatter me. I've finally realized something today. The reason why the Heavens Equal Escort Agency was able to rise so quickly was not because of luck, but because of real strength. Zhao Shanying bowed his head to Lin Yi and said in front of everyone, I'm convinced of your strength in today's battle. You are indeed stronger than my Black Eagle Agency. As soon as these words were spoken, the crowd broke into a flurry of discussion. Because they were more or less looked down upon, their 2 rights to be challenged were not wasted at all, and they delivered a full 200 points to their doorstep. This made the other 5 escort agencies so envious that their eyeballs were about to bleed, especially Boundless Sea. He had long since regarded first place as his in the bag. Now that the 5th round of the escort agency championship was about to end, not only was he unable to close the gap between him and the Heaven's Equal escort agency, but the gap was growing wider and wider. Now, he was being trampled under the feet of the Black Eagle escort agency. How would he endure this? Before this, whether it was the Heaven's Equal escort agency or the Black Eagle escort agency, the public's opinion was always mixed. They were not like the traditional powerhouses like the Four Seas escort agency, who were full of praise for them. They felt that these 2 agencies were just nouveau riche with no foundation and could only be proud of themselves for a while. But now, no one would harbor such foolish thoughts. Not only did the Black Eagle escort agency's points surpass the Four Seas escort agencies, more importantly, they had defeated the Four Seas escort agency in the highly prestigious escort agency championship, and this was under the premise that they had fought against the Heaven's Equal escort agency. If this was considered as having no foundation, then what was the Four Seas escort agency? As a result, the Black Eagle escort agency's strength was deeply rooted in the hearts of the people, enough to become the consensus of the public. Everyone knew that this newly reorganized grassy escort agency's strength was not to be underestimated. At the same time, this also proved another thing. The Heaven's Equal escort agency's strength was even greater. The Four Seas escort agency became the Black Eagle escort agency's stepping stone, and the Black Eagle escort agency became the Heaven's Equal escort agency's touchstone. The stronger the Four Seas escort agency was, the more it proved that the Heaven's Equal escort agency was truly invincible. Chapter 4465. From this, one could see that the Heaven's Equal escort agency's current lead in the leaderboard was due to their true strength, and not some so-called luck. As a matter of fact, there was no logic to the argument of dogs hit luck. It was not the first time that the South Continent Escort Agency Gala had been held, and the intensity and cruelty of the competition had long exceeded the level of an ordinary competition. Under such circumstances, if a weak escort agency could emerge and laugh all the way to the end purely by sheer luck, was it possible? If that really happened, it could only mean that the 32 South Continent's escort agencies were all fake goods, and none of them were truly wealthy. Otherwise, if there was a truly powerful escort agency, they would not have allowed a clown to take first place. That would be a disgrace to the entire South Continent's escort agency alliance. Accompanied by a wave of heavy sounds of the gong, the 5th round of the escort agency competition finally came to an end. After this round of the Law of the Jungle, the situation on the scoreboard had become even more clear and obvious. The first place on the leaderboard was, without a doubt, the Heaven's Equal escort agency, which had surpassed all the other escort agencies behind it with a ridiculously high score of 1,070 points. After eliminating the Black Eagle escort agency with much difficulty, Chi Wen-han still held the precious right to initiate 2 challenges in his hands. Naturally, he would not let it go to waste for no reason. After weighing the pros and cons, he finally chose to make a move on the 2 middle-ranked escort agencies. Without any surprises or danger, he obtained 200 points. Only then did his points reach the staggering 4-digit number of Longfeng Wenxue. In fact, after witnessing the Black Eagle agency trampling over the Four Seas escort agency, Chi Wen-han had thought of adding insult to injury. However, after the previous perilous experience, his father, Chi Mingyuan, was afraid that something might go wrong and was determined not to let him fight personally. The series of fierce battles had already exhausted much of his strength. If Chi Wen-han did not fight personally, it would be difficult for him to win against the flustered and exasperated Four Seas escort agency. Even if they had Lin Yi as their coach, it would not be enough unless Lin Yi personally fought. However, that was impossible. After all, there was still another round of challenges for the leader of the escort agency. Lin Yi was in the eye of the storm, and so many people were eyeing him with malicious intent. The Heaven's Equal Escort Agency was followed by the Divine Wind Escort Agency and the Great Sky Escort Agency. These two veteran escort agencies were ranked second and third, respectively. The Dark Eagle Escort Agency, which had recently gained strength, was right behind them. He was ranked fourth. As for the ambitious Four Seas Escort Agency, the publicly acknowledged tyrant of South Continent's escort agencies, they had no choice but to face the awkward situation of being in fifth place. Even with Boundless Sea's thick skin, when someone's gaze swept over him, even if it was just a casual glance, he would feel a burning sensation and be too embarrassed to face anyone. All of this was caused by Ling Yi and the Equal Heaven Escort Agency. Boundless Sea's heart bled. He gritted his teeth and cursed viciously. Other than that, there was nothing else he could do. He could only hope that the upcoming good show would go as he wished. At the same time that he killed Ling Yi and the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, his Four Seas Escort Agency would be able to snatch back the limelight and continue to be the overlord of the escort agencies. Although the Four Seas Escort Agency was in an awkward situation in comparison, being able to barely get on the last train of the five great escort agency meant that they were able to keep their last shred of shame. The truly pitiful one was the Southgate Escort Agency. Previously, it had been one of the five great escort agency. But now, after 5 rounds of competition, they were ranked 6th. They had been forced out of the ranks of the 5 great escort agency, instantly losing the halo of a powerhouse and becoming a second-rate escort agency. They couldn't even cry. According to this ranking, it could be foreseen that the future structure of the South Continent Escort Agency Alliance would undergo a huge change. Among this change, only 2 escort agencies would be the true winners. One was the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, and the other was the Dark Eagle Escort Agency. Among them, the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency's gains were the most exaggerated. This could be seen from the way the managers looked at the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. Many of these people were clients of the traditional powerhouses of the Four Seas Escort Agency. However, it looked like they would soon become history. If everything went according to plan, after the South Continent Escort Agency Grand Meet, the huge orders placed on the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency's head would undoubtedly reach an astronomical figure. It would be at least a few times more than the previous years, perhaps even dozens of times more. The more orders there were, the more spiritual jades there would be. The more spiritual jades there were, the more powerful escorts they would be able to recruit, rapidly increase their strength, and obtain more orders. This was a snowball effect. Once things got on the right track, no one would be able to stop the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency from rising. However, before that, the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency had to overcome another hurdle: the upcoming challenge of the agency's helmsman. Just like the 5th round of the Escort Agency Grand Meet, this was also a duel in which each agency had to bet 100 points. The only difference was that this was a one-on-one challenge specifically targeted at the Golden Core Stage executives of each agency. Moreover, there was no limit to the number of challenges. This sort of competition did not test the agency's overall strength. Instead, it was entirely dependent on the individual's performance. Luck played a huge part. If an agency was unlucky enough to be challenged by the experts of other agencies, the slightest mistake could lead to the agency's collapse. 100 points per battle, and there was no limit to the number of challenges. No matter how many points they had, they would not be able to afford to lose. Although the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency's current 4-digit points were daunting, it was hard to say if they could safely survive the next round. Perhaps they would fall from the clouds into the abyss. One moment, they were at the peak of their power, but the next moment, they would be nothing more than a flash in the pan. As long as the dust hadn't truly settled, there were still variables. Even though the top 5 escort agencies were obvious on the leaderboard, because of the extra segment at the end, even the losers like the Southgate Escort Agency still had a chance of making it to the top 5. Who would be ranked among the top 5 agencies and who would have the last laugh. Everything was still up in the air. All right, on behalf of the judging panel, I will now announce the rules for the final challenge of the agency's helmsman. Boundless Sea suppressed the hatred in his heart and stood up to announce to the crowd, "The rules are very simple. The first challenger will be decided by drawing lots. He can challenge any Golden Core Stage executive of any agency. The winner of each round can choose to continue the challenge. Of course, he can also choose to forfeit. If the winner forfeits, the right to challenge will be transferred to the loser. If the loser chooses to forfeit, then a new lot will be drawn." The crowd broke into a flurry of discussion. At least on the surface, the rules seemed fair. At the very least, the challenges were not unbridled and completely reckless. Chapter 4466. If the lot drawing process can be guaranteed to be fair and no one tampered with the results, then it sounds reasonable. Everyone will rely on their own strength and luck. There's nothing much to say. Chi Wen-han stared blankly. He had thought that since this challenge was aimed at his own escort agency, it would be as shameless as possible. He didn't think that this rule would sound so righteous and irresponsible. Chi Wen-han was most worried about his own escort agency being ganged up on. Taking turns to wear them down was something even an immortal made of steel wouldn't be able to handle. However, Boundless Sea's rule basically eliminated the possibility of taking turns to wear them down unless someone won against him or Ling won and kept challenging them. But this way, the other side would also be fighting continuously. Both sides would be on the same starting line. Who would emerge as the victor would be decided by their fists. Brother Chi, do the other escort agencies also have Golden Core Stage executives? Lin wasn't so optimistic and suddenly asked. This? Chi Wen-han was at a loss for words. The little bit of joy and excitement he felt from winning the 5th round of the escort agency tournament vanished in an instant. With an ugly expression, he said, "I don't know the specifics, but it shouldn't be much." Looks like it. Boundless Sea was probably aiming for this from start. Lin glanced at the nearby Boundless Sea. At the same time, he glanced at Chung Haonan's group of 3, who were giving him strange looks. He didn't know why, but he had a feeling that these two groups had some sort of connection. Logically speaking, there shouldn't be any connection between the two groups. However, Lin Yi's intuition had always been accurate. He could see some clues from their expressions. A moment later, the judging panel picked out the names of all the Golden Core Stage executives from the escort agencies and announced it to the public. Sure enough, out of all 32 escort agencies, only 12 of them had Gold Core Stage executives, which was less than half of them. Even though the audience had some idea, they were still shocked when they saw this number. Among the 12 escort agencies, the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency was the most eye-catching. The young master Chi Wen-han and honorary escort Head Ling Won were both on the list. Apart from the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, the other 5 major escort agencies, including the newly established Black Eagle Escort Agency, were not on the list. The remaining 11 escort agencies were mostly middling escort agencies. They were neither too strong nor too weak. The Dragon Boat Escort Agency was also one of them. This kind of situation was not difficult to understand. There were many experts among those powerful escort agencies, and it was possible that any ordinary escort had the strength of the late Gold Core Stage and above. This was especially so for the Four Seas Escort Agency and the Black Eagle Escort Agency. The number of Golden Core Paragon experts they had was more than enough to count with 2 hands. As the higher-ups, if they didn't even have the strength of the original infant stage, how could they convince the masses? As for the weaker escort agencies, they were small in scale and didn't have positions such as young head of escort, deputy head of escort, elder, military advisor, and the like. There was no need to set up such positions at all, as it would only result in the decentralization of power. Under normal circumstances, a small escort agency would have at most 1 or 2 other escorts in addition to the chief escort. There were no other senior executives. Although the South Continent Escort Agency Festival was a big event and most of the escort agencies had sent out their elites, it was impossible for them to leave no one behind. At least one escort would be left behind to take care of the rear. As a result, in the list of escorts reported by most of the smaller escort agencies, there was only the chief escort leading the team. It was like a commander without an army. Since he was the chief escort of an escort agency, he couldn't be an expert at the Golden Core stage. Nascent Soul stage was the minimum requirement, so he naturally wasn't on the list. Moreover, there were some escort agencies that were special, but like the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, they had young escort. Their strength was most likely at the Golden Core stage, but the problem was that most of them were guarding the rear. They couldn't send people all the way here at the last minute, could they? That wasn't realistic. Even if these escort agencies agreed, the festival couldn't wait that long. There weren't any first-rate escort agencies, nor any low-end escort agencies. The most likely ones to have Golden Core higher-ups were those middling escort agencies. The Heavens Equal Escort Agency was the only exception. This was Boundless Sea's original intention in proposing this challenge. By proposing this rule, an escort agency like the Four Seas Escort Agency, which didn't have any Golden Core higher-ups, was naturally invincible. They were the only ones who could challenge others, while others couldn't do anything to them. They could attack or retreat as they pleased. On the contrary, the 12 escort agencies, including the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, had become the real prey. As long as they were interested, they could pounce and take a bite. If it wasn't enough, they could take a second bite or a third bite. Of course, the prerequisite was that they had the strength to do so. If they weren't strong enough, not only would they not be able to take a bite out of the prey, but they would also be kicked half to death. Chi Wen-han frowned. Although the situation wasn't as bad as he had imagined, it wasn't much better either. Among the 12 prey on the list, the Heavens Equal Escort Agency was not only the strongest, but also the one that attracted the most attention. It was almost certain that they would be targeted by others. However, he didn't seem worried at all. Even though he knew that this so-called escort agency leader challenge was aimed at him, he didn't take it to heart. The only thing he cared about was whether he had a chance to kill Wu Baoyang. Fortunately, he didn't disappoint me. Linny looked at Wu Baoyang's name on the public list and couldn't help but smile. The conference was about to end, but he still couldn't get a chance to fight Wu Baoyang. It would be a lie to say that he wasn't anxious at all. After all, who was willing to waste time in the South Continent for Wu Baoyang? But now, this additional challenge would make him the target of everyone, but at the same time, it gave him a chance to challenge Wu Baoyang. In comparison, Lin Yi felt that it was a good deal. Anyway, with his current strength, he was absolutely invincible in the Golden Core stage. No matter how many people came to challenge him, they would just be giving away points. It was not worth mentioning at all. Seeing that Lin Yi was so calm, Chi Wen-han couldn't help but be speechless. He admired Lin Yi's strength, but he didn't know how strong Lin Yi was. In the face of such a situation, it was impossible for him not to panic. However, even if he panicked, it was useless. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, the Escort Agency Leader Challenge officially began. The first thing to do was to draw lots. 5 judges supervised together, and there were countless pairs of eyes watching from below the stage to ensure that no one could cheat. As he spoke, Fong Hung glanced at Chung Haonan and the others, and a bone-deep hatred flashed through his eyes. The crowd immediately burst into an uproar. Challenging the Dragon Boat Escort Agency? Was this Chief Escort Fong crazy? Although the Dragon Boat Escort Agency wasn't a big escort agency and didn't have any outstanding performances in the past, at least in terms of performance in this year's conference, they were definitely not weak. Now that he was ranked 8th, he could be considered to be worthy of praise. If the Heavens Equal Escort Agency and the Dark Eagle Escort Agency hadn't attracted everyone's attention, the Dragon Boat Escort Agency would have been in the limelight as well. The Blackwater Escort Agency wouldn't have been able to compete with them. I didn't expect this old escort Fong to be so old and so hot-tempered. He's preparing to take this opportunity to take revenge. Someone in the crowd laughed. That's not surprising. No matter who it was, they wouldn't be able to swallow it. In the first round of the escort battle, the Dragon Boat Escort Agency killed all 5 of their elite escorts. For the Blackwater Escort Agency, this is a huge blow. Someone who knew the situation explained. The competition has always been this cruel. What's there to be surprised about? Since they can't afford to lose, they shouldn't have come. Then just don't come. Someone snorted disdainfully. That's right. With the Blackwater Escort Agency's meager strength, they're now taking the initiative to challenge the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. Isn't it obvious that they want to be trampled on again? Is this old man stupid? Someone laughed coldly and echoed. TSK. This time the Blackwater Escort Agency is really in danger. The bystanders nodded one after another. Discussions rose one after another. There were those who mocked and ridiculed, those who sympathized with the Blackwater Escort Agency, those who took pleasure in the Blackwater Escort Agency's misfortune, and those who coldly watched from the sidelines. In short, there was no such thing as making a scene. 99% of the people present didn't think the Blackwater Escort Agency would win. Listening to these discussions, Fong Heng's expression was as cold as water. In the first round of the escort battle, because of the Dragon Boat Escort Agency's ruthlessness, the entire Blackwater Escort Agency's vitality was greatly damaged. They lost more than half of the few experts they had. They were absolutely irreconcilable enemies. How could he swallow this resentment? This time, he had decided to throw caution to the wind. It didn't matter how many points he had. It was a rare opportunity. The only thing on his mind now was revenge. Although Fong Heng was a little impulsive, he was a veteran of Jianghu in South Continent. He wasn't stupid at all. This challenge by the helmsman of the escort agency was really a rare opportunity for revenge. If it was like the 5-on-5 escort agency competition just now, which tested the overall strength of the entire escort agency, then the Blackwater Escort Agency naturally wouldn't be a match for the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. But now it was one-on-one, so it was a different story. Fong Heng pulled over the last elite escort of the Blackwater Escort Agency, an expert at the peak of the Gold Core realm. He excitedly and nervously exhorted him for a long time before finally watching him walk onto the arena. Whether or not he could avenge himself, success or failure depended on this one move. Looking at the challenger of the Blackwater Escort Agency on the arena, Chung Haonan, Long Qiba, and Wu Baoyang looked at each other and immediately sneered. From the beginning to the end, they didn't put the Blackwater Escort Agency in their eyes at all. They easily killed their opponents. It was like this in the first round, and naturally, it would be no exception now. The 3 of them were still worried about how to snatch the right to challenge. They didn't expect the Blackwater Escort Agency to deliver the opportunity to them in the blink of an eye. Heaven was really on their side. Gentlemen, who do you think is better for us to send? Long Qiba immediately asked. He was an expert at the original infant stage, so naturally, he wasn't among the challengers. However, Chung Haonan and Wu Baoyang were both at the peak of the Gold Core realm. Moreover, they were on the list of higher-ups reported by the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. Chung Haonan was the second escort leader, and Wu Baoyang was the military advisor. Of course, although the challenger sent by the Blackwater Escort Agency was an expert at the peak of the Gold Core realm, the 3 of them didn't put him in their eyes at all. Whether it was Chung Haonan or Wu Baoyang, it would be like killing a chicken with a butcher's knife and making a big fuss over a minor issue. Any elite escort from the Dragon Boat Escort Agency would be enough to solve the problem, but the rules didn't allow it. Although this kind of trash isn't worth mentioning, we must obtain the right to challenge this time. We can't afford to lose. Whether it's you or me, we can't underestimate our opponents. Wu Baoyang and Chung Haonan looked at each other and said, Chapter 4471, Can't Wait. Everyone from the Blackwater Escort Agency, especially the chief escort Fong Heng, turned ashen when they saw this. They didn't even need to go closer to take a closer look to know that their escort, who had been kicked off the arena, was definitely going to die. His chest had been pierced through, leaving behind a huge bloody hole through his heart. Fong Hung blacked out. He fainted on the spot, and the people around him became flustered. The entire Blackwater Escort Agency was in a mess. Not only did they lose 100 points in this battle, but the most important thing was that this escort was the last elite of the Blackwater Escort Agency. All the elites had been annihilated, and all of them had died at the hands of the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. How could they survive this? Chung Haonan watched this scene from the arena with pride, and he grinned without a trace. However, in order to keep a low profile, he didn't say anything. Otherwise, his previous efforts would have been wasted. During the entire process, Chung Haonan didn't show any overwhelming strength. He gave people the feeling that he was just an ordinary golden core perfected expert, and there was nothing special about him. He just didn't want to frighten Ling Yi. This is a good show. If I didn't know that he was the boss of the Poison Eye mercenary group, I might have really been fooled. Lin Yi smiled when he saw this, but he still didn't finish his show. If they were really so anxious, how could his last kick be so clean and decisive? He didn't even give his opponent a chance to breathe. Qi Wenhan curled his lips disapprovingly. Let's see what they're going to do next. I feel that it's time for me to go on stage. Lin Yi smiled faintly. Qi Wenhan was stunned for a moment, and then reacted. He hurriedly said, Brother Ling, Chung Haonan is not a person to be underestimated. If they really want to challenge him, let me go. Are you his opponent? Lin Yi asked in return. Qi Wenhan couldn't help but choke. He wanted to be more stubborn, but in the end, he could only say honestly, no, although I haven't fought with him directly, I still know my own strength. It's more appropriate to let my father deal with him personally. Then that's it. Lin Yi smiled, patted him on the shoulder, and said, If they are coming for me, Brother Qi, you won't be able to do anything. Instead, you'll die for nothing. Don't worry, I can't guarantee anything else, but I'm confident in this. But Qi Wenhan still wanted to say something, but seeing Lin Yi's determined expression, he knew that he couldn't persuade him otherwise. He could only shut his mouth and say, Okay then, Brother Ling, be careful. If you see that the situation is not good, jump off the stage. It's just that you'll lose some points. The escort agency being able to reach this stage is all thanks to you. We are already very satisfied. Even if we lose everything, it's fine. Brother Ling, your safety is the most important. I know. Lin Yi nodded. On the other side, because of Chung Haonan's victory, the right to challenge fell to the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. Long Kiba didn't hesitate at all and directly stood up and announced, The Dragon Boat Escort Agency challenges the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. The entire audience was in an uproar, and the originally tepid atmosphere suddenly heated up. A good show was finally about to begin. The Dragon Boat Escort Agency was originally ranked 8th, and after winning 100 points from the Blackwater Escort Agency, their ranking rose by 2 places, surpassing the Southgate Escort Agency to become the 6th. If they were to win points from the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, then they would directly enter the top 5 and enter the ranks of the top 5 escort agencies. I knew it would be like this. Lin Yi smiled, and after exchanging a look with Qi Wenhan, he immediately stepped onto the stage. No matter who his opponent was, he had to win this match. The reason was the same as the Dragon Boat Escort Agency's earlier match. Seeing Lin Yi step onto the stage, Chung Haonan and the other two were instantly overjoyed. They were just thinking about whether or not they should kill Qi Wenhan first, but they didn't expect that it would be so easy. This guy actually took the initiative to step onto the stage. He was really an idiot who didn't even know he was about to die. He was an evil cultivator through and through. He actually dared to openly appear in the South Continent Escort Agency's grand gathering, and he even dared to enter the arena unscrupulously. There was a distance of 150 feet between them. Lin looked at Wu Bao Liang warily. The thick black gas on Wu Bao Liang's body gave him an inexplicable feeling of fear, even though he knew that the other party was a heretic cultivator. However, even Lin could not determine whether the black aura was a characteristic of the evil cultivator or if Wu Bao Liang really had a mutated spiritual root. No matter what, at least one thing was certain. This black gas was extremely dangerous. Lin was on high alert as he confronted his opponent. At the same time, he recalled the scene from before and analyzed it. He was thinking of countermeasures. Wu Bao Liang's fist that was covered in black gas clearly did not use his full strength, but its power was simply shocking. Lin Yi's raging flame, thousand legs, could not be matched head-on. If he had not used his vital energy to protect his body in time, his entire leg would have been crippled. Looking at the sneering Wu Bao Liang, Lin suddenly felt a sense of crisis. From the moment he broke through to the gold core stage until now, he had experienced a lot of risks, especially when he faced many nascent soul stage masters. However, to be honest, Lin really did not feel any sense of crisis. Instead, he unknowingly had a tendency to inflate his ego a little. After all, he was the strongest gold core stage master who had a perfect breakthrough. Especially when facing nascent soul stage masters, he almost never suffered a loss. Instead, he repeatedly gained the upper hand. If this situation continued for a long time, anyone would become inflated. If he was a little more arrogant, he might even feel that he was invincible. Of course, Lin would not be so stupid and arrogant, but it was inevitable that he was overconfident. Otherwise, he would not have felt that he could defeat Wu Bao Liang for no reason before he fought with him. Fortunately, it was not too late to realize this. Cultivation was to cultivate the mind. If Lin continued to cultivate with this mentality without realizing it, when he reached the nascent soul stage or even higher realms, it was very likely that it would evolve into an inner demon. If it was light, it would be difficult to improve. If it was heavy, he would go berserk. That would be really troublesome. Therefore, Lin really had to thank Wu Bao Liang for letting him see himself again. You talk so tough, but why don't you dare to make a move? Are you afraid of being beaten up? Are you ready to hide like a turtle? Wu Bao Liang saw Lin Yi's expression as if he was facing a formidable enemy. He grinned proudly and said ferociously, "Since you don't dare to fight, then I will take the initiative to send you on your way." Violent sand, thousand explosive fist. Chapter 4471. The black sand created by Wu Bao Liang. Even though it could not completely isolate the divine sense like the sea miasma, could more or less achieve some similar effects. Isolating divine sense. This was a very exaggerated thing for ordinary cultivators. The vast majority of people could not reach such a height even in their lifetime. This required a very high talent for divine sense, and, at the same time, diligent cultivation to have a trace of a chance to achieve it. Everyone was amazed. Wu Bao Liang, who suddenly appeared out of nowhere, was unknown and had no reputation at all. They did not expect him to be such a genius. At this moment, in the black sand, Lin did not give up. This was not his style at all. Although it was difficult to completely see everything around him with the divine sense, with Lin Yi's keen perception and the jade pendant, it was enough to see through the potential danger in advance. The moment he was shrouded in the black sand, Lin immediately made a judgment. The role of the black gas was mostly to block perception and isolate the divine sense. It should not be too much of a threat. The real fatal thing should be the hidden sand that gathered into a fierce flow. Therefore, even if it looked extremely dangerous, as long as he could avoid the sand and fierce flow hidden in the black gas, he should be able to break the opponent's thousand sand-bursting fist. Of course, it was easy to say, but to actually do this was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. because there were not just one or two strands of violent sand currents hidden in the black gas, but hundreds and thousands of them. Moreover, they were extremely fast. Under the premise that the perception of the divine sense was blocked, it was easier said than done to completely avoid it. Even if he had the jade pendant, it would not work because there were dangers in all directions. However, since he was trapped in the opponent's black sand, he could not just give up, let alone sit there and wait for death. No matter how slim the chance was, he had to give it a try. Using the butterfly's subtle steps with all his strength, Lin Yi's figure kept flashing back and forth under the black veil, like a ghost. Erratic and erratic. You still don't give up? Then I'll play with you. Wu Baoyang's trademark sneer sounded especially ear-piercing in the black sand. He hadn't even finished his sentence when the hundreds of streams of sand rushed towards Lin Yi from all directions. The sound of the sand breaking through the air was getting sharper and sharper, making one's scalp go numb. If it was someone who wasn't brave enough, they'd probably be scared half to death, not to mention dodging the black energy and sand. However, Lin Yi was still calm and composed as he faced the encirclement of hundreds of violent sandstorms. Ordinary people would have already lost their heads out of fear, not knowing what to do. This Lin Yi, who came out of nowhere, seemed to be really extraordinary. After blasting out a passage with one palm, Lin Yi suddenly breathed a sigh of relief and quickly took the opportunity to retreat. If even this did not work, then he would really be in danger today. With Lin Yi's super trump card, no matter how strong the opponent was, as long as he was given enough time to accumulate power, he would definitely be able to laugh in the end. There was no doubt about this. However, at this moment, suddenly there was a cold shout from Wu Baoyang in the distance. Explode. Instantly, Lin Yi's hair stood on end. He suddenly realized that this move was not the Raging Sand Fist, but the Raging Sand Thousand Explosive Fist. Everything before was just a preparation. The most important thing was the word explode, which was the real fatal part. Unfortunately, it was already too late for him to come to this realization at this moment. Boom, boom, boom. The continuous loud sounds were like dense firecrackers, instantly resounding throughout the entire Demon Long Square. Everyone in the arena was shocked, and they looked at the arena in horror. They were so shocked that they couldn't close their mouths for a long time. Although they still did not know what was happening in the arena due to the black chi, there were many knowledgeable people present. Even if they used their toes to guess the power behind such a strong tremor, they could guess it. Chapter 4472. Qi Wenhan and the others were all tensed up, staring at every movement in the ring. Even if they couldn't see what was going on inside, they wouldn't let go of the slightest change, fearing that something might happen to Lin Yi. Greater than over equal to 4-all, greater than over equal to 4-all. A moment later, a figure in a sorry state suddenly fell out of the ring. Everyone's worries turned into reality. The person who fell out was Lin Yi. Brother Ling, how are you? Qi Wenhan hurriedly shouted and rushed over. At this moment, Lin Yi's whole body was surrounded by black gas, giving people the feeling that he had been corroded by the black gas. Moreover, there were burn marks everywhere, and some places were even badly mutilated. It was a shocking sight. The audience was in an uproar when they saw this. This battle that no one could see actually ended with Lin Yi, who was in the limelight, being blown out of the ring miserably. It was somewhat unexpected, but also reasonable. Qi Wenhan was at a loss of what to do. Like a headless fly, he circled around Lin Yi, not knowing what to do for a moment. He did not know how to treat it, and he could not even see what kind of injury Lin Yi had suffered and how serious the injury was. He could only stare at the side, rubbing his hands and feeling anxious. Fortunately, Lin Yi's injury was not as serious as everyone thought. Although he looked miserable at first glance, and his injuries were not light, it was not to the point of serious damage to his vitality. At least he could still sit up and heal himself. Of course, This was mainly because he used a lot of qi to protect his body, and also because Wu Bao Liang did not want to kill him. For Lin Yi, as long as he had the physical strength to heal, it was not a big deal. Especially if his muscles and bones were not injured, it would only take a moment for him to recover to his peak. Lin Yi knew that it was not a big problem, but his current state was more than miserable in the eyes of others. He was simply a cripple on the verge of death. There were wounds all over his body. Moreover, there were traces of ominous black gas. If this was not a sign that he was about to die, what was it? The black gas on the arena dissipated, and Wu Baoyang's figure reappeared in front of everyone. Compared to before, everyone looked at him with more respect. This was the treatment that an expert deserved. I declare that the Dragon Boat Escort Agency has won. You can now challenge the next opponent. The referee announced the result. As a result, the Dragon Boat Escort Agency had snatched 100 points from the Heavens Equal Escort Agency and moved up one rank. It had risen from 6th to 5th and had become one of the top 5 escort agencies as it wished. The escort agency that had been squeezed out of the top spot was the most popular escort agency, Overlord, the 4 Seas Escort Agency. In front of Wu Baoliang and the Dragon Boat Escort Agency, the Heavens Equal Escort Agency was not a super dark horse. They were purely a piece of juicy meat. Looking at their stance, they definitely wouldn't rest until they devoured this piece of meat. The Heavens Equal Escort Agency's tribulation had only just begun. However, in any case, it was the Heavens Equal Escort Agency that was suffering. It had nothing to do with the rest of the crowd. Seeing the 2 escort agencies from the Wayark Sea territory fight to the death, they were happy to watch the show. There were many people who were gloating over their misfortune. Looking at the referee's expressions, especially Boundless Sea's sneer, as if they were watching a good show, Qi Mingyuan couldn't help but feel anxious. Now that Ling Wan was heavily injured, he definitely couldn't go on stage. That meant that the only Golden Core expert left in the Heavens Equal Escort Agency was Qi Wenhan. However, even Ling Wan wasn't Wu Baoliang's opponent, let alone his son, Qi Wenhan. Wasn't this asking him to go on stage and die? Head Escort High, you've racked your brains to come up with such an unfair challenge. Not only will you be criticized for no reason, but you'll also end up working for someone else. Your 4 Seas Escort Agency won't get any benefits at all. Don't you think you're too stupid? Qi Mingyuan looked coldly at Boundless Sea. Even a clay figurine would have some anger, let alone a formidable person like Qi Mingyuan. Now that things had developed to this point, he wasn't afraid of publicly shedding all pretense of cordiality. Chapter 4473. We're all smart people here. We know who's right and who's wrong. Why are you still putting on an act and trying to cover things up? My Heavens Equal Escort Agency isn't doing well, but I'm afraid your 4 Seas Escort Agency is going to end up with nothing. You're being stepped on by others. What a joke. Qi Mingyuan sneered. According to the rules of the competition, the 4 Seas Escort Agency, which didn't have any Golden Core experts, were undefeatable. However, it was difficult for them to get a share of the spoils. Unless the winner, like the Dragon Boat Escort Agency, gave up on the right to challenge and drew lots again, they wouldn't have a chance. However, the chances of this happening were minuscule. If things continued like this, the 4 Seas Escort Agency could only watch from the sidelines. They could only watch as the Dragon Boat Escort Agency's points rose higher and higher, until the Dragon Boat Escort Agency's points rose higher and higher. They couldn't do anything about it. It was obvious that the 4 Seas Escort Agency, which had fallen out of the top 5, had become the first victim. Next would be the Black Eagle Escort Agency, the Great Sky Escort Agency, and the Divine Wind Escort Agency. Hearing this, even Zhao Bufan and the others looked at Boundless Sea with unfriendly gazes. They weren't like the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, who was being chased around. Even if their points were affected, it wouldn't be too big. However, The problem was that the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency had suddenly risen up and stepped on their heads. Now, even the Dragon Boat Escort Agency was stepping on their faces. Who could stand that? They were one of the 5 great escort agency, a traditional powerhouse. How could they tolerate a grassroots escort agency with no background? One by one, they were stepping on their heads. Did they even have any face left? Everyone suddenly realized that Boundless Sea wasn't just shooting himself in the foot. Moreover, their feet were also smashed into the ground. Haha, if you insist that I'm targeting your Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, aren't you thinking too much? No matter what you think, I have a clear conscience. The rules of the competition are right there. It's fair to everyone. As long as you have the strength, everyone has a chance. If you feel like you're at a disadvantage, that only means that you're not strong enough. You can't blame anyone else, Boundless Sea said righteously. Since Chief Escort C is so unyielding, then I have nothing else to say. Let me give you a word of advice. Justice is in the hearts of the people. A clown will never achieve anything. Chi Mingyuan gave Boundless Sea a deep look and didn't say anything else. You should return those words to your Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. I feel like it's a short-lived epiphany, but I think it's quite appropriate, Boundless Sea sneered. Seeing Qi Mingyuan and Zhao Buffan's unfriendly expressions, Boundless Sea's previous gloominess disappeared. He couldn't help but sneer in his heart. A bunch of ignorant fools. Do you really think that the Dragon Boat Escort Agency will have a last laugh? Do you really think this chief escort's brain is flooded with water? With the Dragon Boat Escort Agency's fatal weakness in his hands, Boundless Sea wasn't afraid of them increasing their points. Even if they did, it wouldn't matter. When the time came, he would release this bomb and the Dragon Boat Escort Agency would lose all of their qualifications. They were nothing to worry about. However, right now, his 4 Seas Escort Agency was in 6th place. Even if the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency and the Dragon Boat Escort Agency were all eliminated, they would only fall back to 4th place. At most, he would fall back to 4th place. The other escort agencies above him would still take advantage of him. Before that happened, he had to think of a countermeasure. Boundless Sea wasn't going to do something as stupid as giving someone else a gift. Uncle Song, I'll leave the matters of the escort agency to you. I'll go up and fight this Wu Baoyang. Shi Wenhan's expression was cold. After giving this order to housekeeper Song, he immediately prepared to go up and fight. Now that Lin Yi was injured and couldn't go up, he was the only one left. If he didn't go up, who would? Therefore, this time, neither Qi Mingyuan, who was sitting among the judges, nor Steward Song, who was sitting beside him, had any intention of stopping him. Even if they knew that it was dangerous, even if they could be beaten to death, they still had to go. The people of the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency were never cowards. Not to mention that Qi Wenhan was the young master. The wind was howling and the water was cold. Qi Wenhan seemed to have the determination to die. He walked toward the arena step by step. However, just as he was about to step onto the arena, Lin Yi's voice suddenly came from behind him. Brother Qi, wait. Brother Ling? Qi Wenhan was overjoyed. He stopped and turned his head to look at Lin Yi with concern. He asked, Brother Ling, how are your injuries? Are they serious? They're fine. It's not a big deal. Lin Yi grinned. After using his qi to heal him, the injuries that Wu Baoyang gave him had mostly healed. They would soon be completely cured. That's good, that's good. Qi Wenhan breathed a sigh of relief. If something really happened to Lin Yi this time, with his personality, he would definitely blame himself to death. Fortunately, Lin Yi's current condition was not bad. It did not seem like he was faking it. Qi Wenhan nodded at Lin Yi. He then turned around and walked towards the arena again. The stone in his heart had finally been lifted. His footsteps were calm and fearless. Even Wu Baoyang, who was in the arena, raised his eyebrows slightly when he saw this.